Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto trained seriously alone part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Sarutobi was rubbing his temples as he stood in front of the many clan heads that made up the Council of Konoha. Hours earlier, the great Kyubi no Yoko, a nine-tailed demon fox, had attacked his village of Konoha. It was unknown what warranted such an attack from the greatest of the Biju, but what was certain was the imminent threat it posed on Konoha's citizens. Sarutobi at the time of the attack had been retired, albeit a short time, having left the title of Hokage to his successor, or now predecessor, the Yondaime Hokage. The Yondaime had went off to kill the beast himself, taking with him a small child, whose umbilical cord had just been cut, to the battlefield where the Kyubi was being held at bay by the many ninja of Konoha. He had used a complex sealing jutsu on the beast, sealing it within the small child. Though he had saved the village, it had cost him his life, therefore Sarutobi had to once again take up the position of Hokage, despite his old age. After the ninja were brought back in from the battlefield, and the citizens informed of what happened that night, many wept for the Yondaime's death, but others were simply angered that their leader had been taken away so suddenly. Sarutobi then told them about Naruto, how his body had been used to seal the fox, and about how Yondaime had wished him to be recognized as a hero, for keeping the demon within his belly, away from the citizens. The reaction he received was not one he was expecting. The citizens of Konoha suddenly turned from a mourning crowd into an angry mob in an instant. Immediately they were calling for the death of the young child, asking for his blood in exchange for what had happened to their leader. Sarutobi was shocked, and when the citizens began raising weapons and trying to get past the Chunin blocking their way, Sarutobi withdrew from the crowd into the council's room. A meeting would take place to decide the fate of the child. Once again things did not go as Sarutobi had hoped. When he entered the council's room, there were icy cold glares fired towards the boy, as well as massive amount of killer intent from many ninja clan heads. Sarutobi had to force himself to repress a shiver from going up and down his spine. He may have been Hokage, but he could not stop an entire room filled with angry clan heads from attacking the boy. Sarutobi laid the boy down in a crib not far from where he stood, and then turned to face the council. The meeting was called to order, and immediately clan heads were asking for the boy's blood. "Order, order!" Sarutobi shouted as he finally got his migraine under control. The entire room became silent as Sarutobi rubbed his temples before continuing. "Now then, this meeting has been called to discuss the fate of Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi. During this meeting, as in the others, we will have order. The floor is open for suggestions," Sarutobi said, but he knew what would be said. "This meeting shouldn't even be necessary. It is obvious what we should do. Kill the demon now before it gets a second chance." Suminazuka, head of the Inuzuka clan, shouted as there were several cheers and shouts of agreement along with her. Killing a child would be meaningless if it never posed a threat. On top of that, we never questioned the ability and knowledge of Yondaime-sama before, and to believe now that he would lead us astray in his final act of sacrifice would be us placing an insult upon his grave, on top of an already barbaric act. Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan, shouted as there were few shouts of agreement accompanying him. Sarutobi sighed in relief, at least there were those that were willing to listen to him. While killing a child is a barbaric act, we cannot discount it in this case. While Yondaime-sama was indeed skilled, and he would not lead us down the wrong path, it's not beyond reason to think that something, just something, may have gone awry, whether it be that the seal is too weak to hold the fox for long, or perhaps the Kyubi has managed to take control of the boy. Whatever the case, these possible detractions outweigh possible benefits that I can foresee, thus the option of solving the problem before it begins must be kept on the table. Shibi Aburame stated calmly as others shouted agreements. Many could barely hear him over the sound of the other members. Sarutobi had just about as much as he could take. With the shouting, the headache, and now even the unbearable distaste he felt towards the clan heads who could not put faith in his successor/predecessor, he had it. "Silence!" Sarutobi shouted as the entire room became eerily quiet. None have ever heard the Hokage shout like that, at least none who have lived to tell about it, or have been scared shitless. Sarutobi rubbed the bridge of his nose, trying to release the pent-up stress entering him. Suddenly Fugaku Uchiha, father of Itachi, and current leader of the Uchiha clan, rose from his seat. "Hokage-sama, it is out of the utmost respect that I will say this to you," Fugaku said as the aged Hokage stared at him. "For the safety of my clan, not only them but the entire village, I implore you to end this abomination's life." Fugaku stated firmly as many joined right in with him. "You may implore and ask until you are out of breath, Fugaku-san, but I will not allow this child to be slain," Sarutobi returned, Fugaku's anger flickering across his face as he stared the aged Kage down. How far are you willing to go to protect this monstrosity's life, Hokage-sama? Because I can assure you that I am prepared to go just as far, and farther, in order to ensure the safety of this village, and to end this thing's life. Fugaku said in a tense manner, as, suddenly, the entire room fell silent. Had Fugaku just implied, knowingly or unconsciously, that he would, should this meeting decide to allow the fox child to live, go against this wish and then go forward on his own to strike out at the boy? Yet, soon enough, the silence was overcome by noise. This noise, for the most part, was of approval, as other clans and minor houses began to join in with Fugaku, and by extension, the Uchiha clan. Though shouts of disgust or disapproval quickly followed, it was not enough to drown out the shouts for the boy's blood. Sarutobi slowly looked across the room, first noticing Shibi's sudden lack of movement. The Aburame seemed to glance at Sarutobi, and then look away for a moment, perhaps realizing that his side of the argument had just gotten out of hand. The Inuzuka matriarch, Tsum, quickly joined in with Fugaku, and the minor houses quickly followed up. Sarutobi also quickly noted that, amongst those with him and against Fugaku, were the Nara, Akimichi and Yamanaka clans, the loyalty of the three lifting Sarutobi's confidence a bit. At one last glance, Sarutobi looked over to the Hyuga patriarch, Hayashi, and noticed that he was merely sitting there, staring blankly as almost every Hyuga Sarutobi knew had. Sarutobi knew that Hayashi wouldn't join in on his side or Fugaku's for another. The Hyuga main house, Sarutobi was sure of, would be very much for getting rid of Naruto. On the other hand, they'd be disgusted with possibly being on the same side as the Uchiha clan. A neutral stance would be the best way to keep the main house from fighting within itself. With the Uchiha clan, Inuzuka clan, a less than fully supportive Aburame clan, and many of the smaller houses, threatening to take action into their own hands, with only the Nara, Akimichi, Yamanaka clans supporting Sarutobi, with the Hyuga standing outside the battle as a neutral power, Sarutobi knew that this would be a battle that no one would win, especially so soon after the devastation struck. Sarutobi had effectively been boxed in by the outrage of both sides of this argument. To get out, he'd have to do something he knew he'd regret. He'd have to make a compromise that would, somehow, placate both. Silence! Sarutobi shouted, even louder this time, as everyone sat there and stared again. You could taste the fear generating off of some of the clan heads. Sarutobi sighed as he began. In order to solve this, I will compromise. Sarutobi said as everyone sat down, waiting to hear this compromise. I will be creating a law, as of today, that will forbid the mention of the sealing of Kyuubi into Naruto to anyone of his generation. Sarutobi began, raising his hand to quell any potential outrage. However, Naruto Uzumaki will live as any orphan in Konoha. He will be sent to an orphanage in the village, and what happens to him afterwards, Sarutobi began saying before the opposing sides began smirking, and the side that were with Sarutobi began grimacing. I will not be able to interfere with whatever happens to him, Sarutobi said as the entire room fell silent, with those having supported Sarutobi sitting there, their jaws falling open. Even Hayashi Hyuga looked on in shock. What say you, Fugaku? Sarutobi asked, placing the ball into the Uchiha clan head's court. Fugaku sat in his seat and contemplated the deal out on the street. Without the protection of the Hokage, the child was as within the reach of the Uchiha clan, through its police force, as any other person in the village. Should the little thing get out of line, he would know about it within mere minutes, and be able to act upon it in seconds. In his mind, Fugaku also knew that Sarutobi knew this, which meant the old man was just doing whatever he could to keep the kid alive. The realization wouldn't miss the other shinobi gathered either, which meant that he, and his clan, could relish in the political victory of getting Sarutobi to place the boy on the edge of his fingers. With a small smirk forming upon his lips, Fugaku looked up at the aged Kage and nodded. You have my vote for this measure, Sandaime-sama. Fugaku said in a faux polite manner, those having sided with him quickly following up behind him. Sarutobi looked at the other members, whom, somewhat reluctantly, gave a nod of affirmation themselves. The motion passes, the laws are in place. With all business finished, this meeting of the council is adjourned, Sarutobi said, ending the meeting as soon as possible. As the clan members left, Sarutobi just sighed as he began walking back to his office. He would have to find an orphanage for Naruto that would, at the very least, take minimal care of him. The years to come would be hell for Naruto Uzumaki, and for now there was nothing Sarutobi could do about it. 3.5 years later, Hokage Tower. I hate it when I'm right, Sarutobi thought as he stared at his crystal ball. Naruto's life up to that point had been, for a lack of a better word, been pure hell. While he was successful in preventing any of the adults from telling Naruto, or telling other children, of his identity as the Kyuubi's carrier, he wasn't nearly as successful as keeping people from sticking it to him, through either outright ignoring the child, or through other, sometimes somewhat violent, means. As Hokage, he could dissuade people from these violent actions by enforcing existing laws, but he could do little more than that. His compromise had tied his hands behind his back, requiring Sarutobi to only assist Naruto in the manners in which current law would allow, which just basically meant fining and punishing people for their actions whenever they would occur. Today, however, he witnessed an action in his crystal ball that nearly caused him to swallow his pipe whole. The orphanage, after having put up with Naruto for the past few years, tossed the boy out on his rear. Now, he merely watched as Naruto wandered the street, the poor child looking confused, dismayed, absolutely destroyed. Sarutobi sighed as he leaned his head against his hand. One of the worst decisions I've made, no doubt. Streets of Konoha. What did I do wrong? Naruto thought as he wandered down the street, confused as he kept his head down. Was it something I said? The young blonde added as the clouds began rolling in overhead, the blonde not noticing as he just continued moving right along. Naruto walked around the streets, looking up to meet the glares of the villagers with his own eyes. Why do they hate me so much? Naruto thought as the wind blew and Naruto began hugging himself to keep warm, his hands running up and down his arms. Naruto's life in Konoha was terrible, to be completely honest. No one would allow him into their shops, but what was he going to buy? He had no money, no one gave him food, no one gave him money, and no one gave him a home. Suddenly lightning flew through the air, and Naruto ducked down, covering his head with his hands, and cowering from the lightning. After a while the lightning picked up, and so did the winds. Naruto was beginning to shiver more, from cold, and from fear of the lightning. He tried to run into a clothing store for shelter only to be chased out by a woman with a broomstick. Naruto ran out, and fell over onto the street, sitting there for a moment before another bolt of lightning scared the young boy into crawling right into an adjacent alley. And at the point where Naruto believed that things could not get any worse, it began to rain. Naruto's eyes began to well up with tears, and those tears began to mix and mingle with the rain as he took an abrupt turn into an alley. Maybe he could find a nice box to keep him a little dry, or a little warm. Naruto walked through the several alleys. Eventually he found the entrance to one he did not believe he had seen before. This was a large shawl thing covering the entrance of the alley, like how those cloth things do to some shops, and it was eerily silent on the other side of the shawl. There were kanji on the shawl, but Naruto was unable to read them, so he passed right through the cloth entrance, coming upon a big, empty lot. Of course, this lot had not always been empty. During the Third Ninja War, while many of Konoha's ninja were out fighting the good fight against other ninja villages, crime began to flourish inside of the hidden village. At first it was rather simple crime, petty thieving, pickpocketing, the tiny things that could happen on a weekly basis. However, without the large amount of ninja in Konoha ready to patrol the city, what was small crime slowly turned into large crime. Small groups of thugs were getting together to rob entire stores blind, assaults on the few ninja inside of the city began to grow, and small extortion rackets were beginning to build. Out of this crime grew a small syndicate, a group of criminals assembled from shinobi returning from the war front, injured. The empty lot Naruto stood in was a former hideout. While in its current state it was just a lowly lot, back during the height of organized crime in Konoha this was the place to be, secluded from the main streets, and somewhat hidden in what had become the twists and turns of Konoha's urban sprawl. It was a good place to duck away for a while. However, when Konoha's full forces returned at the end of the war, crime was immediately crushed under the thumb of the shinobi, and the syndicate dissolved. Of course, little Naruto was unaware of this. All he knew was this was some place somewhat shielded from the drafty winds, and seemed pretty deserted. A good place to rest. So, Naruto did just that. The young boy walked up towards one of the walls, picking up an old rag to go along with him, not noticing the small metal object falling from the same rag, and laid himself down beside the building, slowly nodding off into a shallow sleep. The next morning. By the time the sun rose, Naruto's small stomach was already roaring in protest at its lack of nourishment, as it did nearly every morning. This, somewhat suddenly, woke the small boy up, as he yawned and rubbed his eyes. Naruto had actually been very surprised to have slept so long and so completely, oftentimes the shouts from a random adult, or just the sheer cold waking him up several times in the early morning. Still, this mattered little to the poor blonde boy, as his stomach still roared. So, Naruto stood up, laid the rag down, and began walking. As he took his small steps, the street orphan accidentally kicked something, sending it stumbling across the lot. Naruto looked at what he kicked, and was wide-eyed and surprised to find a metal kunai, rusted as it may have been, laid right there. Naruto had never really been so close to a ninja weapon before, though he had seen some of the ninja carrying them. Naruto wandered over to the small metal weapon and picked it up, stuffing it into his pocket. Who would know if he would need it or not? After his small discovery, the blonde orphan went garbage can diving for almost an hour, not even finding an old shoe for him to chew on. Naruto's stomach let out another loud growl, and Naruto clasped it and began crying again. He sniffled a little bit, trying to keep the mucus from coming out, when all of a sudden an aroma came to his nose. Naruto smelt the air several times before drool began coming out of his mouth. He began following the sweat smell to the streets of Konoha, right up to the Konoha bakery. Naruto looked at what he had been smelling that entire time, a fresh loaf of bread. Naruto stared at that bread with wanting eyes. A loaf of bread may not seem much to most, but to Naruto Uzumaki, it looked like the best meal a person could ever have. Naruto began walking towards the bakery, ignoring the hated looks from most of the people, and walked right into the bread store. Naruto walked right up to the counter and looked at the bread with lustful eyes. He was then hit on the head with a broom. "Get out of here, demon, I don't have time to deal with you," the baker said as he walked into a back room. On any other day, Naruto would have listened. On any other day, Naruto would have walked out the door of the shop, obeying the person no matter how bad they were. But today Naruto's young mind couldn't care less about what the baker said. Naruto didn't care about him, he didn't care about that the baker didn't want him here. The blonde was the hungriest he had ever been, and he was going to eat. Naruto glanced around quickly for anyone watching, and when he saw the coast was clear, he quickly grabbed the loaf of bread and ran out. The baker walked out of the room, and saw the bread was gone. He ran out to see Naruto run down the street, and he got pissed. "Hey, someone stop that kid! He stole my bread!" the baker shouted as several chunin looked up. Theft, even for a small loaf of bread, was a crime in Konoha. However, most chunin wouldn't allow themselves to chase down such a minor theft. Most of the time it'd just be genin who'd pick up the tab. However, seeing a mess of blonde hair and whiskers quickly changed the surrounding chunin's minds. They quickly began running down the street, chasing Naruto like a dog would chase a cat with its food in its jaws. Naruto looked back and saw the chunin chasing him, and he began running even faster. Though he was running as fast as he could, the chunin were catching up fast. Naruto began thinking of what he could possibly do to get away, when suddenly a thought hit him. Naruto reached into his sleeve and pulled out the kunai. He looked back to see the chunin approaching, and he threw the kunai in a random direction towards them. Fortunately for Naruto, fate seemed to like him today. The kunai flew through the air, into the ground, and that ground was right where the chunin in front of the rest was about to step. He stepped on the kunai, and then tripped over, causing his fellow chunin to fall over him. They all laid there on the ground, and watched as Naruto Uzumaki got away with his breakfast for the day. Naruto made it back to the empty lot and began eating the bread fervorously. Meeting room. "This is an outrage," one council member shouted. "You have to do something," another shouted. The Council of Konoha and Sarutobi were back in the meeting room they had occupied 3.5 years earlier. News had gotten around of how Naruto Uzumaki had stolen a piece of bread and had gotten away. The council members who had wanted Naruto dead were furious about this, while the others who had wanted him alive were just sitting there, not really disturbed at all about this event. Sarutobi, despite this, was smiling, and when the shouting of the council members was over he looked up and showed them his smile, creeping most of them out. "I'm sorry, but you all told me not to have anything to do with him, to treat him as a normal orphan, so that's what I'll do, let the police take care of it," Sarutobi said smugly as he effectively ended the meeting, causing the angry clan members to begin cursing, while the others just sat up and left. Yes, finally things were finally happening the way he wanted them to. 2 years and 3 months later. We overlook the city of Konoha once again. After almost 6 years after the Kyuubi's attack, Konoha's morale had recovered and its productivity increased very well. More buildings and areas that were devastated during the Kyuubi's violent attack were reconstructed or reformed. Markets were now booming, as it seemed as though war and disaster were slowly becoming a distant memory. Yes, overall Konoha improved greatly, but there was still one individual that was a thorn in the side of the military police and the business owners of Konoha. Naruto Uzumaki, now also nicknamed by citizens of Konoha as the Street Fox of Konoha, has been a part of one of the largest streaks of thefts in Konoha. It all started one day. 2 years and 3 months ago the Street Fox had stolen a loaf of bread. Now ordinarily this crime is looked down upon by the military police, they rather use their members for higher ranked crimes. But with Naruto Uzumaki being the one stealing the bread, things changed. In the report the chunin who had chased Uzumaki, it read, "Though we were very close to apprehending Naruto Uzumaki, he skillfully chucked a kunai at the ground in front of us, causing us to stumble, not only over the kunai, but over each other. The embarrassment that the military police suffered, not only from the ninja populace, but from the entire population of Konoha, was great." Soon, Naruto became a part of several thefts across Konoha. Anything that he could get his hands on, that was useful to him, he got. Food, drink, books, even shinobi equipment like kunai, shuriken, and ninja wire were not safe. Anything outside those categories were safe though, for it would appear that Naruto Uzumaki knew better than to go for the big stuff like clothes, ninja scrolls, explosion tags, or large amounts of money, for those things could actually land him in hot water with the Kage. Though many believe him to be nothing more than a convict, theft is the only crime one could convict him of. Crimes such as arson, homicide, genocide, breaking and entering, he would always steal during the day, when it couldn't be considered trespassing in a store's property, could not be found in his record. Even when he would be chased by the military police, he would use only non-lethal methods to disarm, distract, or discourage a ninja, or to discontinue a chase. In fact, the only wounds a ninja would suffer would either be a scrape, a bump, or a severely injured pride. At first, Naruto could be easily caught and forced to give back what he stole. In some cases he was given several punches across the back of the head. But he never learned that lesson, and always came back to steal. And now, in recent months, he has been able to outrun the Chunin who have chased him, severely injuring the pride of the shinobi. If only one could view such a chase as an Uzumaki chase, one would be able to see the level of cunning, speed, agility, and stamina Naruto Uzumaki. Get back here! Oh, one appears to be starting as we speak. Streets of Konoha. We now watch as we see Naruto Uzumaki barreling down the street, with two random Chunin chasing him, again. Naruto held in his arms a rather large loaf of bread. It would appear as though lunchtime had rolled around once again for Naruto. Naruto was wearing very poor clothing, most of it looking like it had been gotten out of a trash can. They were, or what appeared to be, the tattered remains of a brown t-shirt, a former pair of cargo pants, torn off at the knees, and very old wooden sandals. As for Naruto himself, he looked like any 6-year-old would, well except for the bad clothes and him being kinda skinny. His hygiene didn't appear to be too poor, as there wasn't too much dirt and grime covering him. Though he wasn't muscular, you could see little amounts of muscle, for the baby fat that should have covered him still was not there to hide the muscle. Earlier Naruto Uzumaki had snuck out of one of the alleys. How he does this out of nowhere no one knows, and into the local bakery. He then grabbed the loaf of bread he now carries and then ran out of the store, with the owner running out and screaming, "Help, it's the street fox, he has stolen from my bakery again." This immediately brought the two Chunin who were chasing Naruto to the scene. "And now, for the rest of the chase, haven't you guys given up yet? You can't catch me now," Naruto shouted back at the two Chunin, and to aggravate them more, he began slapping his rear end, causing huge veins to show upon the two Chunin's foreheads. "We'll get you, you little brat!" one of the Chunin screamed as they both sped up. Naruto snickered as he began twisting and turning, ducking and dodging his way through the large groups of people in the street. He even went under one teenage girl's miniskirt on an occasion. "Nice!" Naruto shouted as the girl blushed profusely. "Help! Pervert!" the girl yelled as she ran off, and the two Chunin ran after Naruto, blushing at what he did. "That fox is gutsy," one said, while the other simply nodded along with him as they continued their chase of Naruto. Eventually they got to a very crowded street, so crowded that there was absolutely no room for Naruto to get through. "Ha! We have you now, Street FO," one of them began as Naruto leapt up into the air, and landed on top of one of the pedestrians' head, and began leaping across the large amount of civilian heads, like cobblestones in a river. "Ox!" the same Chunin finished as he stared as Naruto leapt across the group of people. The two Chunin looked at each other and shrugged as they began doing the same as Naruto, only because they were heavier most of the civilians collapsed under their weight as they leapt off. Eventually, Naruto made it across the civilians, and ran off. The Chunin made it shortly afterwards, and sped off after him. After about 5 more minutes of running, Naruto figured he was in the clear, so he began picking up speed, to begin the process of losing his would-be convictors, when all of a sudden a third Chunin jumped in front of him, with his arms stretched open, ready to capture him. "I have you now, Street Fox!" the Chunin shouted as Naruto smirked and ran right up towards him. Naruto got within 6 inches of the guy and, using his leg as a pivot, spun completely around him, and as he got behind him he put his foot on the third Chunin's back, and pushed off. Not only did this send Naruto off, with a little higher speed, it also sent the third Chunin forward into the other two Chunin who, figuring the third one would capture Naruto, didn't anticipate this turn of events, and they fell on each other. They all got up and sped off to try and get Naruto again. No way were they letting him get away again. Meanwhile, Kakashi Hatake, a recently retired ANBU member, walked out of a bookstore, with a melancholy grin on his face. In his left arm he held a plastic shopping bag, the contents of his small and rectangular. He walked over to a trash bin outside the bookstore, and took out the object, and slammed the bag into the can, as he brought the book up to his face and began laughing maniacally. "At last! At long last!" he said as he began crying a little. "The latest issue of Ika Ika Paradise is mine!" Kakashi shouted as he held up the book in the air, as if it were some kind of glorious treasure. Kakashi then leaned up against the wall of the building, flipped the book open to the first page and began reading. He was slumped up against the wall, standing as still and as silent as a statue, except for the occasional turn of the page and perverted giggle. He heard shouts coming from the end of the street, and let his arm drop and he looked up to see the commotion. He watched as Naruto came barreling down the street, with the 3 Chunin, with patches of dirt on them from their fall, chase after them. So that's what an Uzumaki chase looks like, Kakashi said as the chase flew past him, and he brought his hand back up to his face, only to find his precious book not in it. Kakashi raised his one visible eyebrow as began looking around. He checked the ground, his other hand around his feet, his pockets, and even began digging in the trash can for it. He then began trying to look for genjutsu. Maybe it was that Chunin Kurenai, practicing her genjutsus on him and his books again, which annoyed Kakashi to no end that she was actually that good with a genjutsu. Then all of a sudden, Kakashi heard Naruto start speaking, and turned to look down the street, to see Naruto Uzumaki with his new book open. "Hey, what's this?" Naruto said as he flipped the book page. And he cupped her precious orbs into his hands. "And what's this word here?" Naruto said as he looked it over. "I can barely understand a word of this, the words are too big. Oh well, it will have to do. After all, I need something to keep the fire lit tonight," Naruto said as he closed the book, and Kakashi's sweat dropping as he heard Naruto declare his book to be kindling for his fire. Kakashi sighed as he scratched the back of his neck. "Great, I just really wanted to relax today. Guess that plan's out the window for now," the silver-haired Jounin said lazily as he got down into sprinter's position, and then sped off towards the thief. Naruto continued running from the Chunin chasing after him, though after a while he figured he should lose him quick. After all, he was getting hungry, and had a book to break in. So Naruto began looking to the streets in front of him, and saw a melon cart crossing the street. Naruto smirked as he sped up, and as he was within 5 feet of the cart, he leaped onto the other side of the cart, bent down to pick up a melon, and then pushed off the cart, much in a similar way he did with the 3rd Chunin. "My melons!" the owner of the cart yelled as the melons began pouring out of the cart, and rolling down the street towards the Chunin. The Chunin, who were moving too fast to avoid them, tripped on some of the melons, causing them to fall into the melons, and had to watch in horror as everyone kinda pointed and laughed at the now melon-covered Chunin. "Man, we're going to get it now," one Chunin said, know that the head of the military police department was going to bite their heads off for this. "Yeah, we'll never hear the end of this," another Chunin said, knowing that they were going to be teased by other ninja, members of the department, and civilians of Konoha. Then all of a sudden, Kakashi leapt over them, onto the side of the fallen cart, and leapt forward to continue the chase. "Hey, wasn't that the Chunin?" said as he got up. "Kakashi Hatake?" the other 2 Chunin said as they looked on. They looked at each other and nodded, and leapt off to try and catch up, knowing that the chances of Naruto's escape were now almost next to none. Naruto continued running down the street, the book in his left hand, the melon in his left arm, and the loaf of bread in his mouth. The corners of his lips were pointed upwards, indicating he was happy for his success in getting away from the 3 Chunin. He continued running until he felt a strange presence behind him, and nearly choked on the bread he held between his teeth. There was this one-eyed guy wearing a flak jacket, chasing after him, not just chasing him, but actually catching up to him. Naruto began panicking as he looked around for an alternative escape route. He obviously wasn't about to outmaneuver this guy, so there. Naruto thought as he saw a ladder on the side of a building. There it is. He thought again as he tossed the book into his left hand, it wasn't grasping the melon, and grabbed the rail of the ladder with his right, and began climbing at a mile a minute. Kakashi arrived just as Naruto reached the top, and with the skill only a Jounin could possess he ran up the side of the wall. When Kakashi reached the top he looked around, expecting to see Naruto somewhere around, but he didn't. He continued scanning the rooftop till he spotted his Ika Paradise book, laying next to the ledge. Kakashi looked down at the book as his eye curved into a U shape, before he walked over to pick up his book. The scarecrow picked up his book and dusted it off, before turning right back to the page he was reading. Before long, the 3 Chunin who had been pursuing Naruto caught up, before they also began scanning the empty roof for the blonde boy. "Kakashi-san, where is the street fox?" the Chunin asked as they expectantly awaited an answer from Kakashi. Kakashi turned to them, a deadpan look in his eye as he shrugged at them. "Beats me, I lost him," Kakashi said plainly as the 3 Chunin sighed. "Well, let's go back to the department then. Thank you, Kakashi-san, for your help," the first Chunin said as all 3 bowed to him, and then disappeared. Kakashi stared for a moment before turning back to the ledge. "I would like to thank you for returning my Ika Paradise to me. It's the latest issue and I would have been inconvenienced to have to go out and buy it again," Kakashi said, to seemingly no one. "You know, I didn't see the entire chase, but you look like you pretty well outran those 3 stooges back there, and even managed to swipe my book for a bit. You'd make a pretty good ninja," Kakashi said, his eye turning towards the ledge instead of his book. "Well, enjoy the rest of the day then," Kakashi said as he disappeared in a puff of smoke. On the other side of the ledge, we see Naruto, the bread still in his mouth, and melon still in his left arm, hanging by his fingertips on a window's ledge. He was shaking slightly as he released a breath he was holding in as the Jonin left. Naruto pulled himself back up to the top of the building, and then looked back down the side. He smirked as he got out a ratty old glove, with a rusted, metal plate on the back. He forced it on with his teeth and walked over to the ledge, and jumped over the ledge. Naruto twisted his arm around, and as he fell he grabbed a cloth hanging wire and began sliding down it. As he reached the wall he positioned his feet and legs in front of him, and they stopped him from ramming into the wall, a lesson he had to learn the hard way. He looked down to see a very old spring mattress, with several shoe prints on it, on the ground below him. He let go of the wire and fell down, landing on top of the mattress. Naruto got up off the mattress and made his way to a section of fence at the other end of the alley. Naruto bent down, and put his lunch on both sides of him, and pulled a section of the fence out of the fence, and then grabbed his meal and walked through, placing the fence section back on as he made it through. He walked down a few alleys till he reached an opening with a familiar shaw closing it off. Naruto moved that shaw to reveal the former Red Dragon hideout. The entire hideout itself had gone over quite a bit off a change. There was no longer any dead bodies laying around, though there were still spots of blood. In one corner, there was a small makeshift tent, made out of torn, damaged, or otherwise ruined blankets. In another there were ninja equipment, slightly rusted and blunt kunai and shuriken stacked on top of the other, and some ninja wire lay there. In the middle of the hideout there was a fire going, with 2 rabbits being roasted over it. You see, whenever Naruto couldn't get something from the city of Konoha, he got from the woods. Whether it be food, water, or even baths, he took them in the rivers. Naruto sat down beside the fire, and got out a kunai he had in one of his old pants pockets, and cut the bread in half, and the melon in several pieces. Today's meal would be roasted rabbit sandwich a la king, with some melon slices. Naruto stared at the meal for a little bit before bringing his knees to his chest and wrapping his arms around his knees and lowering his head. He would have to repeat this same routine for lunch and dinner like every other day in his life. Council meeting room. The Hokage was smiling happily as he entered the council meeting room. It was only a few months before the beginning of the new Ninja Academy year. Many of the clan heads' children were to enter this year. Those included were the Uchiha, Hyuga, Nara, Akimichi, Yamanaka, Haruno, Aburame, and Inuzuka. The Hokage held in his wrinkled right hand a file, and in this particular file contained several documents on one Naruto Uzumaki. If there was a time for Sarutobi to make his move, it would be right here, right now. Sarutobi walked into the middle of the room, right into his usual spot, and smiled at the clan heads. Said smile caused shivers to go up many of the clan heads' backs. The last time they saw that smile was about 2 years ago, when he was able to slip Naruto Uzumaki out of getting in trouble for stealing the loaf of bread. If the smile was an indicator of what would soon happen, then it would not be good for them. What is going on, Hokage-sama? I thought we already went through the clearance meeting, Shikaku said as others nodded along with him. The clearance meeting he talked about was a meeting in which a select number of children would be accepted to the Ninja Academy that year. Many years, there would be too many to fit in, but this year, there were not as many as normal, so they had room. Well, Sarutobi said as he threw the files in front of Shikaku on his desk. I would like to propose one more, a late entry, wouldn't you know? Sarutobi said as Shikaku raised his eyebrow and opened the folder. At first his eyes widened, but then that shortly passes as he began going through the pages that were in the file. After a while Shikaku threw the file back to Sarutobi and leaned back in his chair. So what do you think, Nara-san? Sarutobi asked. The Nara clan head looked at him. Well, he appears to have potential, but how can we be sure that he really could pull through? Shikaku asked as the clan heads raised their eyebrows. Who? They all asked as Sarutobi continued. Well, I figured that the information in this folder would be enough, but if even you have your doubts, Nara-san, then we may need to take an extra step to prove his worth, Sarutobi said as the clan heads began practically leaning over their desks. Who? They all asked as Shikaku continued. A formal test may help, Hokage-sama, Shikaku said as the Fugaku Uchiha practically leapt onto his desk. Who in God's name are we talking about, Hokage-sama? Fugaku shouted as the other clan heads nodded as well. Why Naruto Uzumaki, of course, why do you ask? Sarutobi said as an uproar of disapprovements began growing in the room. They all shouted and complained for what seemed to be hours before they all shut up and Sarutobi cleared his throat. Are you quite done yet? Sarutobi said as Tsum actually jumped on top of her desk. Are you crazy? Are you actually saying that we should give that thing the training it would need to kill us all? Tsum shouted as there were many cheers of agreement to go along with her. Well, Inuzuka-san, if you were to look in this folder, Sarutobi said as he threw the folder to Tsum, then you would see that he has much potential as a ninja, And shouldn't it be my job to help recruit any individuals who would help strengthen Konoha's military might? Sarutobi said as many of the clan heads began groaning. Sarutobi, the old genius, found a loophole in the original deal. He found a damn loophole. Fugaku Uchiha felt trapped. As Hokage, Sarutobi had the perfect right to just go ahead and give Naruto the okay to be enrolled in the academy, though it would come at a great cost to potential support amongst the members of the council whom were still amongst his line of thought on future efforts. Fugaku smirked, realizing that Shikaka had just helped deliver to him a path to victory. Hokage-sama, Fugaku said as he smiled, causing all attention to be turned to him. Though I do not like the idea of him going to the academy, I must agree with you, a ninja with so much potential would do well in the academy. Fugaku said as several clan heads' mouths dropped. However, I would like to have a formal test of the boy, as Narasan said. Fugaku said as Sarutobi turned his full attention to Fugaku. And I would like to have my son, Itachi, be the one testing him. Fugaku said as Sarutobi sighed and took a drag on his pipe, while other clan heads raised their eyebrows. Very well, Itachi Uchiha will chase Naruto Uzumaki around Konoha, keeping an eye out on various skills and abilities he may show during the chase. Once he apprehends Naruto, he will bring him to me and debrief me on the test. You all will be able to listen through the intercom system. Are we agreed, Uchiha-san? Sarutobi said as Fugaku nodded. Very much so, Hokage-sama. Fugaku said as he bowed and Sarutobi called the meeting to a close. Sarutobi watched as Itachi appeared beside his father, and Fugaku whispered something in his ear, and he nodded. Sarutobi took a drag on his pipe, and then left to cut off Itachi before he got out of the Hokage Tower. Itachi was walking through the halls of the Hokage Tower, on his way to the exit so that he could begin to search for Naruto Uzumaki. Itachi cared little about the fate of the boy, merely wishing to get this over with in order to continue his mission schedule. Though, his father's own little additional order made its way to the forefront of his mind. Make it impossible for him to show needed skills, anything short of injuring him. We need to keep this as under the cuff as possible. Fugaku's voice rang out in the ANBU's mind. It was a smart strategy. Make it look like you were open and willing to work with the Hokage, underhandedly make it so you get what you'd want in the first place, and all the while if the Hokage makes any noise about it, the elder man merely looks like he's challenging the honor of a high-class, very well-known member of the ANBU. Itachi was just about to get to the stairs when Sarutobi walked out of another hall and walked towards him, a smile on his face. Well, hello there, Itachi-san, how are this fine day? Sarutobi said as Itachi just looked at him. Hello to you too, Hokage-sama, and I am just a little annoyed with this test, it seems like such a trivial matter. Itachi said as Sarutobi nodded and smiled. Yes, well, it is something that must be done, and I do wish you luck, Itachi-san. Sarutobi said as he extended his hand forward. Itachi looked at it before extending his own hand forward and grasping the Hokage's. They shook each other's hand for only a second before the aged Hokage pulled Itachi into him, Itachi going forward with a small wah dash before the Hokage put his head right beside Itachi's ear. Now you listen to me, Uchiha, Sarutobi said as he tightened his grip on the Uchiha's hand, causing him to wince a little bit. Your father and I are hardly on friendly terms as it is, and he on even less favorable terms when it comes to Naruto Uzumaki. So, realize that while this examination is taking place, my eyes and ears will be on you if I notice anything funny, or if you even so much as fudge a single detail because your father commanded you to lie to my face, and to the men and women of the council. Well, I'm the Hokage, I'll have you on watch duty along the walls for so long you'll forget what going out and doing an active mission feels like. Sarutobi said in a stern tone, Itachi just looking at the aged Kage before somewhat nodding. Good, then be on your way, lad, Sarutobi said, giving Itachi a smile before walking off. Itachi watched as Sarutobi slowly walked off before shaking his head a bit. Itachi was more than smart enough then to think that Sarutobi's little threat was empty. Given the choice between merely disappointing his father and having his growth as a ninja stunted by a lack of missions, the choice was easy enough for the power-driven Uchiha. Itachi began to run off, ready to begin his examination of the young Uzumaki. Konoha Market District approaching noon. Itachi Uchiha had to say that for a kid who hasn't even yet begun to attend the academy, that Naruto Uzumaki was very difficult to locate. When he first began the search part of his mission, he thought that he would be able to locate the 6-year-old boy in no time at all. After all, he was 6, he wouldn't have the ability to stay in his hiding place forever, he was bound to get bored eventually. However, he never met a 6-year-old like Naruto Uzumaki. The young ANBU captain had been searching the city all morning for this brat, yet there was absolutely no sign of him. He tried in dark alleys, the only thing he found there were rats, cats, and a few insects, but no 6-year-old brat. He tried garbage cans, figuring someone that small would be able to hide in one pretty easily. But the only things he found were trash, and a copy of Ika Ika Paradise. Proper resting place for this smut, Itachi mentioned idly as he closed the lid on the trash can. He then checked some of the older building in Konoha, figuring that the kid may have taken up refuge in one of them empty, destroyed, old, or otherwise, buildings. He searched through all of them, and yet still not a single trace of the brat. He went so far as to transform into a sucker and place himself in an alley to lure him out. Though that idea failed when he ended up being chased by a bunch of old, dirty cats. One of them Itachi swore looked like it was the daimyo's wife's cat. Itachi made a mental note that he would get to the Hokage and tell him about that. Itachi looked at one of the clocks hanging in a shop nearby. It was noon, and by the time it had passed Itachi was just about sick and tired of looking around for the brat. It was as Itachi began making another pass around the market district when Itachi suddenly heard the sound of glass crashing, and followed it. Itachi ended up on the rooftop opposite a butcher shop, and he saw that one of the windows had been busted open with a butcher knife. Itachi's eyebrows raised as he listened in on comments like "give that back you rotten thief," or the best in his opinion "I'll break your damn legs you little son of a bitch." He then saw none other than the target, Naruto Uzumaki, rush towards the other, unbroken window, and crash through it as another butcher knife went past his head. He picked himself up and grabbed the large piece of steak he had managed to grab and ran off down the street as the butcher came out with a knife in each hand. Two Chunin made it to the scene a few moments later, and upon learning what had just happened began running down the street after Naruto. "Get back here, Naruto Uzumaki!" was their battle cry as they went after him. Itachi followed the chase on the rooftops with his Sharingan activated, picking up on the smallest of movements made by the target. As the chase entered the 5-minute checkpoint, Itachi made several observations about Naruto's running form. He was fast, not fast enough to lose Itachi, but definitely fast enough to keep further than an arm's length from the two Chunin. His actual form was well imperfect would be an understatement. It was practically disastrous, though there were traces of a ninja's running form in it, they were few. It looked like he just stole a glance at one of his pursuer's running forms and tried to imitate it. But despite the obvious lack of form, the kid was proving to be naturally fast. With some training at the academy, his speed would probably improve even more. Currently his speed was around that of a Chunin, perhaps even a moderately experienced Chunin, which was allowing him to pretty easily outpace his pursuers. Is this running speed really what all the fuss is about? Were Itachi's thoughts as he continued watching. He assumed that his speed would raise to at least a newly recruited Jounin with the proper form. He watched as Naruto slipped into an alley, and the two Chunin followed. The NBU watched as the Chunin searched the alley for him, only to find no sign of him. They ran off, the search now apparently over. Itachi sighed as he performed a one-handed ram seal and disappeared in a burst of speed. Meanwhile, in the empty alley, a garbage can began shaking around, until the lid popped off and Naruto's head popped out. He searched around till he was sure that the alley was empty. He climbed out with the steak in between his teeth. When he got out, he spat the meat into his hand and smirked towards the entrance. "Suckers," he said as he took one step behind him before bumping into Itachi. Naruto leapt back and around so that he was facing Itachi, with a very shocked look on his face. "Hey, how did you get behind me?" Naruto shouted as he pointed towards Itachi. "That does not matter. What does matter is that I'm here to take you to Hokage-sama," Itachi said as Naruto raised his eyebrow. He had heard of this Hokage guy before. Lots of the Chunin who chased him scream at him that the Hokage should have killed him while he was in the crib. Now Naruto may not have been taught anything in his short 6-year-old life, but he was sure that you didn't want to meet anyone who would kill you. So Naruto backed up to the garbage can and glared at Itachi. "Screw that!" Naruto shouted as he slammed his hand down on the side of the lid of the garbage can, causing it to flip over. Itachi's eyes widened as he saw the kunai that was tied to the lid with some ninja wire. Naruto tore the kunai from its place and flung it towards Itachi's head. Itachi moved his head to the side to dodge the kunai, and smirked at Naruto, that is until Naruto flung the garbage can lid like a frisbee towards him. Itachi bent over backwards in order to dodge this metal projectile, but then Naruto did something he could not have now, or could not ever have expected. Naruto ran up to him, cocked his leg back, and kicked Itachi in the sensitive area between his legs. Itachi went from bending over backwards to dodge, to falling onto his back because his legs gave out from under him. Naruto smirked as his move worked. He saw a woman do this to a guy who was touching her chest once, and he had the same reaction as this guy. Naruto ran out of the alley, and then down the streets of Konoha, to get away from the now stunned Itachi. Taijutsu High D rank, the kid has weapon skills, Itachi thought as he began sitting up, thanking Kami he had such a huge chakra reserve to help ease the pain. But that kind of move is completely below anyone who seriously considers themselves a ninja, the NBU said, momentarily forgetting he was dealing with a 6-year-old child. Itachi stood, and when the pain had finally died down, the chase had begun proper. "Also, I have to admit the kid is pretty clever. Hiding a kunai in such a spot makes you wonder if there are other spots like that in Konoha. Itachi thought as he was catching up to Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto was having a blast. Not only had he gotten to test out that technique, but he also got to keep his meal. His smirk withdrawed, however, when he felt someone behind him. He stopped and turned around, not seeing anyone. He shrugged and faced forward again, only to be greeted with the sight of Itachi in front of him. Naruto jumped back 10 feet and looked down at Itachi. What the hell, the guy I watched get kicked stayed down for at least an hour. How did you get up so quickly? Naruto shouted as Itachi's sweat dropped. It does not matter, I'm here to take you to Hokage-sama. Itachi said as Naruto began panicking a bit, but then he got an idea. It was simple. But if this guy was so easy to kick in the sack, then this would be a piece of cake. Naruto was about to pull off his trick until he saw something very disturbing behind Itachi, something that made his blood turn cold and sweat uncontrollably. Hey, what's that over there? Naruto shouted as he pointed in a direction behind Itachi, a look of fear mixed with panic on his face. Itachi sighed as he looked the kid square in the eye. If you think that old trick will, Itachi said until he felt a familiar presence behind him, one he felt at least 3 times a day when he was in Konoha. He turned around and what he saw confirmed his suspicions. Oh no, it's Itachi, began until. Itachi Kuen! A herd of girls screamed as they ran up to him. Yes, it was the Itachi Uchiha fan club. Itachi-kun, where have you been? One fangirl shouted. How was your last mission? Another shouted as Itachi just stood there and looked at them. Itachi learnt long ago that when dealing with fangirls, if you run it makes it even worse. He looked behind him and sighed as he saw that his target had once again evaded him. Itachi performed half of the cross-shaped seal, and a shadow clone of himself appeared beside him. Please aim all questions towards him, I have a mission to complete. Itachi said as he began running down the opposite end of the street, not only to find Naruto but to also get away from his fan club. As he left, his shadow clone was suddenly being smothered, glomped, and kissed by the Itachi Uchiha fan club. He must have gotten pretty far by now. Itachi thought as he ran down the street / got glomped by fangirls. Itachi continued running down the streets, and he kept on looking around. He was about to give up on his own search, that is until the smell of meat cooking came across his nostrils. Itachi looked around until he realized the smell was coming from an alley. Itachi raised his eyebrow and walked down the alley. He continued walking, following his nose to where he would hope to find his target. Eventually he reached a shaw / Itachi raised his eyebrows at the strategically placed cloth. With the smell of roasting meat behind it, it likely meant someone was living there. Even if it was just the Uzumaki child, who knew if he had the place booby-trapped. Itachi pulled out one kunai and slowly walked past the shawl. Itachi gave the area a once-over before he was satisfied that he was alone, and safe from any sudden tricks. He walked around and noticed the fire burning in the center, the meat burning upon it, still a little raw. Itachi began searching for Naruto until he stumbled upon something, a patch of grass that looked like it had been moved from somewhere. Itachi bent down and removed the grass, and saw that underneath it there were papers with crudely drawn passage maps of roads and alleys on them. As Itachi inspected the papers, he came to realize that, as crude as these may have been, they were the layout of Konoha's various streets and alleys. Dotting the paper was red dots, likely areas where traps had been set. This boy is quite smart. He's not only placed traps all over Konoha, but he's also made out maps to memorize so he can immediately access them from memory, and judging by the detail of the alleys, he also knows quick routes around Konoha. Itachi thought as he put the papers back down onto the ground and covered them back up again. He stood up as he heard a gasp come from the opposite end of the hideout. He turned to see Naruto Uzumaki coming in, with what appeared to be a few fish in his hands. How the hell did you find me? Naruto shouted as the fish were dropped to the ground. Itachi simply pointed to the meat cooking over the fire, and Naruto's sweat dropped. Well, you aren't going to catch me, Naruto shouted as he ran down the alley from which he came. Itachi sighed as he followed him, right to a dead end. The only exit was blocked by a wooden fence. You can't run now, Uzumaki, Itachi said as he watched Naruto rip off a section of the fence, crawl through it, and then place the section back on. Or maybe you can, Itachi muttered as he jumped over the fence, to see Naruto climbing up a ladder. Itachi sighed as he jumped up to the rooftop, just as Naruto reached the top. Naruto looked at Itachi in shock as he ran to the opposite side of the roof, and jumped off the ledge. Itachi sighed once more and walked to the ledge. Naruto slung to the ledges of the windows of the rooms just below the roof. He hoped to God that this trick would work. He only had one more up his sleeve after this one. Though those hopes were destroyed when Itachi suddenly leaned over and looked at Naruto upside down. Naruto looked up to see Itachi just standing on the side of the building, nothing attaching him to the building, just standing on the side as if he were standing on the ground itself. Naruto gulped as he looked at Itachi's upside-down face. Really, is this the best you have? Itachi asked as Naruto gave him a scowl and let go of the window ledges. Itachi looked down to see Naruto pull out a ratty old glove and force it onto his hand. As he got the glove on, he grabbed a clothesline and slid down it for 2 seconds, and not even waiting to hit the wall, he let go and landed in a dumpster. Naruto jumped out of said dumpster and ran over to the fence at the end of the alley, which also had a loose section of board. Itachi sighed as he jumped off the side of the building and on top of the fence. Itachi looked down to see a sewer lid jumping around as it fit itself back into place. Itachi's sweat dropped as he realized what this meant. I'm going to have to go into the sewer, the ANBU thought as he sighed. Meanwhile, Naruto was trudging through the sewer, moving around with the hopes that he could lose this guy before. Freeze! He heard behind him. He turned around to see that indeed Itachi was a few feet behind him. Naruto began chuckling, which kinda creeped out Itachi. Hey, I gotta say you're good. Only a few guys actually followed me all the way down here, Naruto said as his face became more serious. But no one has ever caught me after this, Naruto shouted as his hand shot down into the sewer water and yanked from it a kunai. Naruto then threw that kunai towards Itachi's head, Itachi merely ducking his head to the side. The Uchiha genius looked at Naruto, who looked about as frustrated and angry as a 6-year-old possibly could. So now you see you really had no chance of escape. Now you're coming with me, Itachi said as he took one step and then fell. Itachi looked down to find himself waist deep in something. Itachi scooped up mud. Itachi Uchiha had just fell into a mud hole. Ha! I knew that stuff would come in handy, Naruto shouted as Itachi looked up at him. You can't possibly be serious? This is just mud, I can get out of it, Itachi said as he placed his hands against the walls, straining against the mud pit as he tried to pull himself out, the suction of the pit keeping the ANBU sucked right into it. I found it in the woods while I was hunting. My meal got caught and so I lost it, but I found a perfect trap, Naruto shouted as he jumped over Itachi's head. Now you'll never catch me now, Naruto shouted as he ran back down the sewer's tunnels. Itachi stayed there for a second, shaking slightly, clenching his fists, and then he began laughing. He laughed and laughed and laughed till he was blue in the face. When Itachi's temporary moment of insanity was over, he turned his head to face the tunnel Naruto had run down. I've made my decision, Itachi said as he looked down at his waist. But now I have to figure out how the hell to get out of this, Itachi said as he began trying to pull his way out of the mud. This may be a bit harder than I thought, Itachi muttered as he continued to pull. Meanwhile, Naruto was back at his hideout, enjoying his meal of steak and fish. Naruto was eating the steak pretty slowly. After all, Naruto didn't get good pieces of food like that every day, so he learned how to enjoy it while he could. Then the sound of water dripping came from the other side of his hideout. Naruto reached for a kunai he had used to skin the fish and jumped up and turned around and was treated to a sight he had not expected to see. From the waist up, Itachi Uchiha, ANBU captain, looked perfectly normal. But that was not what was knocking Naruto for a loop. From the waist down, the only thing Itachi was wearing was a pair of boxer shorts with the Uchiha clan symbol on them. Now this was going to defeat Naruto for 3 reasons. For one thing, the boy was still only 6 years old. For another, 6-year-olds found nearly everything funny, and finally, no one in Konoha couldn't possibly keep themselves from breaking out into laughter at the sight of the great Itachi Uchiha in his boxers. Naruto collapsed to the ground, laughing while he held his ribs and rolled around. Itachi just sighed as he walked over and picked Naruto up by the collar and began carrying him through the alleys. After about 5 minutes, Naruto stopped laughing, and he was now pouting. He had been caught. But Naruto noticed something, that this particular alley led to a community place where there were a bunch of people with the weird fan thing on their backs. Bet you 500 yen we run into someone you know, Naruto said while smirking as Itachi glared at him for a moment before sighing. Yeah, I know, Itachi said, though he said he knew he didn't know just how right Naruto was. As Itachi walked out of the alley, he was treated to the most horrifying sight of his life. Itachi had managed to find his way right to the middle of the Uchiha clan compound at its busiest time of the day, and managed to walk out right into the middle of many of his non-ninja relatives, who immediately became as mirthful as Naruto had been mere moments ago. As the ANBU began taking his walk of shame down the street, Itachi pulled 500 yen and was about to give it to Naruto before Naruto pushed it back. Please, this is enough of a treat for me, Naruto chuckled out before Itachi began walking down the street. He was laughed at no matter where he walked. Needless to say, Itachi's ego took quite the pounding that day. Though the calm Uchiha didn't show it, he hardly had any pride left inside of his body. At this point, he was actually going to be quite happy taking this kid to the Hokage's office and get him out of his hair. Itachi finally reached the Hokage tower. After having to walk through the entire Uchiha district in his boxers, he was glad to be able to finish this mission. He walked up to the secretary, who was sporting a blush on her face from the deep-pants Uchiha, looked her straight in the eye. I'm here to see Hokage-sama. Could you tell him? Itachi began as the secretary cut him off. He's been expecting you, Uchiha-san. Please go on to his room. The secretary said as Itachi nodded and continued to carry Naruto by his collar. By the way, the new look works for you. The secretary shouted as Itachi began running up the stairs, hoping the Hokage wouldn't say anything about his attire, which was highly unlikely. Itachi walked up to the sliding door and knocked on it. Come in, Itachi-san. He heard Sarutobi say on the other side. Naruto heard the same voice, and was a little shocked. He expected the Hokage to sound a little more powerful than that. As Itachi walked in, he saw Sarutobi raise his eyebrow at him. Don't tell you have fallen under the sway of Ika Paradise too, Sarutobi said as Itachi shook his head no, and Sarutobi sighed. Naruto kinda stared at the old man in front of him. This old coot was the guy who should have killed him while he was in the crib? Sarutobi smiled as he looked between Naruto and Itachi. So Itachi-san, how did the testing go? Sarutobi asked as Itachi sat down in a chair, and threw Naruto into another chair. Itachi, tired and grumpy, began his evaluation. Well, my evaluation of this kid is good, Itachi said, trying to keep his modesty intact, and he could have sworn he had some groans coming from somewhere. Early on I found him stealing from a butcher. The chase between him and the Chunin that followed showed me that he had fairly good speed, that would only improve with proper form. Itachi said as Naruto just sat there with a melancholy grin on his face that just said damn straight I'm fast. His taijutsu, well, he has good weapon skills, but other forms of taijutsu, Itachi said as he absent-mindedly rubbed his sack. Could use some work, he said as Naruto practically jumped out of his seat. Hey, what do you mean? I got you down with one kick to your balls, Naruto shouted as Sarutobi blushed and the sound of people doing a spit take was slightly heard. Itachi blushed as he rubbed the bridge of his nose. Anyway, I'm willing to bet that his intelligence is at least D rank, Itachi said as Sarutobi nodded. But that's not to say that he isn't clever, Itachi said as Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. He might not be book smart, but the kid is clever, very clever, Itachi said as Sarutobi nodded. His survival skills are obviously some of the best I've seen. To be able to grow up on the streets of Konoha, and survive for that matter, is amazing in itself. After all, you must know the learning arc with those conditions, right, Hokage-sama? Itachi said as Sarutobi nodded. Yes, I'm aware you either learn and adapt, or you don't survive to see tomorrow, Sarutobi thought as Naruto's smirk grew even more at the praise. So I'm willing to bet that most lessons that would be taught to him he would pick up on, whether it would take a short time or a long time, however I am not sure, Itachi said as Sarutobi smiled, feeling more and more assured of Naruto's chances. So overall, Itachi began as he lowered his head. He's a devious, cunning, thieving little kid, and by far one of the most aggravating people I have met in my entire life, Itachi said as Sarutobi could just see in his mind's eye the smirking features of the council members. So, with this in mind, I find Naruto Uzumaki to be well suited for a career as a ninja, Itachi concluded, Sarutobi's eyes widening for a mere moment, surprised to hear the Uchiha state this, before a small smile graced his lips, and he motioned for Itachi to continue. He has shown skills in survival, speed, weapon skills, and trap making that you don't normally see in any genin. He has also shown that he is cunning and deceitful when it comes to tough situations. So yes, Hokage-sama, I would gladly say that Naruto Uzumaki would make a good addition to our ninja forces, Itachi said as Sarutobi smiled, nodding at the young ANBU. Thank you, Itachi-san, you may get some replacement clothing in the ANBU locker room, Sarutobi said as Itachi nodded and made his way out of the room. As he left, Sarutobi smiled that his plan had gone so well. Now there was only one thing left to do, convince Naruto to become a shinobi. Hello there, Naruto, I am Sarutobi Sandaime Hokage, and it is a pleasure to finally get to meet you, Sarutobi said as Naruto just kind of stared at him. Naruto stared at Sarutobi for some time. He was not used to being smiled at, and so the way the aged Hokage was weird. What was he trying to pull? Look, I don't know what I'm here for, and whatever it is, I'm sorry, Naruto said as Sarutobi was about to open his mouth. If it's about the steak they say I stole, I swear to Kami-sama I found it on the street in a garbage can, Naruto said as he panicked slightly while the Hokage lifted his hand up. Naruto, please, this has nothing to do with that. I cannot punish you for such a minor offense, Sarutobi said as Naruto stood up and seriously began panicking. Look, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how that dog ended up with a shave, but it was someone else. It was an accident. It had it coming. The little mutt bit me, Naruto began shouting in a crazy and wild tone while the Hokage just sat and stared at the crazy little blonde and his rants. Naruto, calm down. I have not brought you here to punish you, and what are you talking about? The only report I have received of a dog with a shaved butt is Tsum Inuzuka's partner Hokage said as he looked at Naruto with a raised an eyebrow while Naruto grew a sweat drop the size of his head and began chuckling nervously as he scratched the back of his head sheepishly. You know what, forget I said anything, Naruto said as he sat back down. Then, 5 minutes later, he coughed a few times into his fist. So are you going to punish me for something or what? Can't think of any other reasons for being here, Naruto said as Sarutobi smiled and as he put some tobacco into his pipe. Well, you see, Naruto, I am not here to punish you. You see, I am the Hokage, leader of this village, Konoha. The only things I am really in charge of are shinobi-related crimes. The rest, such as thefts, organized crime, not paying taxes, and such are left to the Konoha military police. Sarutobi said as he smoked some of his tobacco while Naruto stared intently at him. Are you here to be punished? No, Naruto, far from it actually. Sarutobi said as Naruto raised an eyebrow. In fact, I would like to offer you a position. Sarutobi said as Naruto's eyes widened slightly. A job, if you would. Sarutobi said as Naruto's jaw dropped. Now there was something Naruto had never expected to hear. Offer and job were words he only expected to hear in his dreams, but they were being spoken to him right now. But Naruto got a questioning look in his eye as he stared down the aged Hokage. What kind of job are we talking about here? Naruto asked as Sarutobi chuckled. I thought you may ask that. Sarutobi said as he put the cap on his pipe and laid it down. You see, Naruto, I would like to make you a shinobi, or ninja, of Konoha. Sarutobi said as Naruto leaned forward in his chair. Like I said, I am the leader of Konoha, a ninja village in the land of fire, and the most powerful ninja village at that. Sarutobi said as Naruto leaned forward more. But you see, in order to keep this power our own, we require new shinobi in order to fill our ranks. So I would like to recruit you, Naruto Uzumaki. Sarutobi finished as Naruto leaned back in his chair and tapped his chin. What makes you want to recruit me anyway? Naruto said as Sarutobi smiled. Well, Naruto, one only needs to look at your record in the military police station to figure that one out. Sarutobi said as he pulled a file out of the many stacks of papers on his desk. He opened the file and began reading from it. Naruto Uzumaki, age 6, gender male, citizen of Konoha. Sarutobi said as he flipped to the next page. Criminal record, over 100 robberies of many stores throughout Konoha over the past 2.5 years. Merchandise stolen includes clothes, ninja equipment, food, water, and the like. Sarutobi said as he turned to the next page. In the first year of his crime spree, his success rate for theft was 40%, being caught a majority of the times by Chunin. Punishment for crimes has not been recorded, Sarutobi said as he looked up to see Naruto shudder a little bit before continuing. In the second year of his crime spree, his success rate for theft jumped to a 73%, the Chunin's capabilities of catching him dropping significantly. Sarutobi said as he looked up to see Naruto grinning cheekily while blowing on his fingernails. Sarutobi smiled as he continued. And halfway into the third year of his crime spree, Naruto Uzumaki's success rate has been 87%, practically avoiding all Chunin, but still runs into trouble when the occasional Jounin captures him. Sarutobi said as he closed the folder and put it back into his desk while smiling at Naruto. Now, coupling that with the report Itachi Uchiha, an ANBU captain, gave me just a few minutes ago, I don't see why I shouldn't recruit you. Sarutobi said as Naruto resumed his thinking position. Okay, then what's in it for me anyway? Naruto said as Sarutobi smiled and looked at Naruto. Well, Naruto, along with being a shinobi of Konoha, you would have to go through the Ninja Academy. Sarutobi said as Naruto's sweat dropped. And that's supposed to be good, why? Naruto asked as Sarutobi smiled. Well, I just thought that meeting, talking, and even possibly playing with kids your own age would be exciting. Sarutobi said as Naruto raised an eyebrow. He had never played with anyone, at all, before. The adults wouldn't let him. And then there's being assigned to super, secret, and dangerous missions, the likes of which ordinary people only dream about. Sarutobi said as Naruto leaned forward. Then there's the wealth of experience and respect one gets as a shinobi. Sarutobi said as a glint went through Naruto's eyes as he leaned forward even more. And then, there's getting paid, Sarutobi said as Naruto jumped up on his desk and looked him straight in the eye. Paid, that means I get a payment for each mission, right? Naruto asked as Sarutobi nodded. And I get paid with real money, right? Naruto asked as Sarutobi nodded again. Money I could use to buy stuff around here, right? Naruto asked as Sarutobi nodded. Naruto's fox-like smile grew tenfold as he saw the last nod. He jumped off the aged Hokage's desk and put out his hand. You got yourself a deal, old man. I'll become the best damn shinobi you've ever seen. Naruto shouted as Sarutobi shook his hand. Good to hear, but watch your mouth, young man. Sarutobi said as Naruto nodded. Sorry, he said as his smile returned. Man, I can't wait. First I'm going to pass this academy thing with flying colors. Then I'll go on these super high-paying missions and get lots of money. Then I'll buy everything I could ever dream of having, a huge house, a bunch of furniture. Naruto ranted as Sarutobi simply looked at the boy and smiled as he turned to a picture of the Yondaime Hokage hanging on the wall. Yondaime, I hope that wherever you are that you'll see just what a fine young man you have picked to be Konoha's hero. Sarutobi thought as he looked at the energetic blonde. Whether Konoha wants him or not. Sarutobi thought as he took the cap off of his pipe and began smoking it again. Say, old man, when do I go to this academy thing? Naruto asked, finishing his long rant about his future plans, as Sarutobi simply smiled as he exhaled the smoke and threw Naruto a calendar. What's this thing? Naruto asked as Sarutobi reached for a specific date on the calendar, which was only a few days away from the current day. On this date, a couple hours after sunrise, is when the academy will begin. Sarutobi said as he pointed to the current date, as well as the few days that lead up to that date. When all of these days are up, is when you go to the academy. Sarutobi said as Naruto nodded, smiled, and took the calendar. No problem. Academy, here I come. Naruto shouted as he ran out of the office, leaving Sarutobi to go from happy to slightly sad. I'm sorry I cannot do too much more for you than this, Naruto. Sarutobi said as he tilted his hat forward. Even if I now have the freedoms to choose your academy instructor as well as your possible Jonin sensei, I'm afraid that's all I can do. Even now, almost the entire council would forbid me from doing too much more for you. I'm afraid you'll have to continue living like you do for the next possibly half-dozen years, Sarutobi thought as he remembered just how long it could take Naruto to graduate. But then again, Sarutobi thought as he smirked. The training from the academy would give him better chances of survival, Sarutobi thought as he looked up at the door Naruto just left through. And while he would be surviving, it would help train his ninja skills to a certain degree, Sarutobi thought as he smirked more. Kami-sama works in mysterious ways. Maybe getting kicked out of the orphanage and living on his own was actually one of the best things that could have happened to Naruto in this situation. Sarutobi thought as he looked out of his window towards the sky. Kami-sama certainly does work in mysterious ways, Sarutobi thought as he put his pipe down and began working on the one thing he hated more than anything else, paperwork. Streets of Konoha. Naruto was walking through Konoha's bustling streets, grinning from ear to ear, causing some of the people on the street to stare at him with mildly worried looks. Naruto didn't pay any mind to them today though, because he was about to go somewhere that would make his life even better than before. Naruto eventually made a turn into an alley and started walking through them. He thought a lot about what he was going to do when he entered the academy. But one thought crossed his mind as he was about to enter his hideout. He really didn't have too much. He entered his hideout looking down at his clothes. They were old, smelly, and frankly, looked like they had been eaten, digested, thrown up, and then eaten again. Naruto then looked over at the corner where he kept his ninja equipment. His kunai and shuriken were rusted, the ninja wire was old, and very, very thin. He looked at the old ninja sandals he was wearing, and though he couldn't tell it, the soles were so worn they were probably about ready to give out from underneath him at any second. Now he couldn't start off a career as a shinobi of Konoha looking like something the cat dragged in. So Naruto went over to his old ninja equipment and got a few yards of ninja wire. Today Naruto Uzumaki's targets were not food, water, and other such necessities. No, today's targets were new shoes, new clothes, and better ninja equipment. Naruto placed the calendar by the makeshift tent he slept in so he wouldn't lose it, and ran out. He was on the hunt. Naruto's first, and most likely his easiest, was the ninja equipment. Naruto normally only stole new ninja equipment once per year, in order to avoid some of the more violent shinobi that would chase him. But due to using his newly stolen shinobi equipment for traps, tricks, and other things, they wore down faster than when he just used them for getting away. So he was due to get some new stuff. Naruto made his ways through the twists and turns of the alleys of Konoha, making his way to the shinobi general equipment hut shop he knew to be at the end of one of these alleys. Naruto popped his head out of an alley and looked around for the hut, and indeed there it was. Naruto checked the clock on the inside of the hut, and found that it was the right time to make his move. You see, when Naruto first started stealing equipment 2 years ago, he studied the documents those bad men left behind after that's besides the point. Anyway, he found out the owner of the shop left his shop every day around the time the sun was past overhead, noon. So, after checking to make sure this was true, he went into the store, and would rob them of the basic equipment each year, the only people really knowing being the Chunin that would chase him down day after day. Naruto watched as the man left his shop, and walked down the street humming a tune. Naruto smirked as he made his move into the store, making sure no one saw him going in. After all, he couldn't afford another exhausting chase before the academy, ha ha ha. Yeah, right. Naruto thought as he walked into the shop. The shop was a basic shop, lights hanging off the ceiling, with aisles of shinobi weapons free for the taking. Naruto looked around, reached into one of the many old pockets in his very old pair of pants, and pulled out a burlap sack. Cliché yes, effective yes. Naruto made his way into the kunai aisle and began loading the sack up with kunai, when he heard a gasp from behind him. Naruto turned around slowly to find that he was being watched by a girl, at least a year older than he was, wearing just a pink, no-sleeve t-shirt, and some black shorts. Her brown hair was done up in buns, and she had brownish eyes. Naruto stared for a moment, and she stared for a moment before she broke the awkward silence. "What are you doing with our kunai?" she asked as Naruto's sweat dropped before mouthing sorry. There were sounds of struggle, yelps for help, and then smothered yelps for help before the shop was silent. We look inside to see Naruto had tied up the mysterious girl with some of his old ninja wire, and then gagged her with one of his old gloves. "Now if I take this glove out of your mouth, you won't scream, okay?" Naruto asked as the girl nodded slowly and Naruto took out the glove. The girl gasped for air for a second before glaring at Naruto. "What's the big idea? Who are you and who do you think you are?" she asked as the resident thief's sweat dropped. "Well, my name's Naruto Uzumaki. Oh crap, I shouldn't have told you my name." Naruto moaned as his 5-year-old mind had not thought of that sooner. When he looked up at the girl, he noticed something weird. She had stars in her eyes. "Naruto Uzumaki?" she asked quickly as Naruto nodded. "The Naruto Uzumaki?" she asked again as Naruto nodded. "I'm the only one I know," Naruto said as the stars grew. "Are you the street fox?" she asked, sounding slightly excited, as Naruto nodded again. Then she did something Naruto could not expect. She squealed in a high-pitched squeal like he heard from those fangirls that he saw with the guy who caught him earlier today. When she stopped, Naruto stared as she began jumping around in her chair. "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! I'm being robbed by the street fox. No one at the academy is going to believe me," she shouted as Naruto's sweat dropped. Excuse me?" Naruto asked as the girl scooted the seat closer. "I never thought I would be robbed by the street fox himself. And now I am. I mean, I expected you to be taller and older, but this is cool nevertheless," the girl shouted as Naruto's sweat dropped again. Could you tell me why you're acting like this?" Naruto asked as the girl stared in awe at him. "Don't you know, you're the street fox? You're practically a living legend in our class at the academy," the girl said as Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Really?" he asked as the girl nodded fervorously. Yes. I mean, you steal from shop owners, outrun Chunin and Jonin, and then you disappear out of sight, into the dark of night, all of a sudden. You're like a manga character only for real," the girl shouted as Naruto grinned and rubbed the back of his head. "Wow, first the old man, then an entire class at the academy? I'm more awesome than I thought," Naruto thought as the girl continued. "So what do you want to rob from me, Street Fox-san?" she asked as Naruto's sweat dropped. "Well, I'm starting in the academy myself, so I came to steal kunai, which I have, shuriken and ninja wire," Naruto said as the girl nodded. "Alright, if you untie me and promise me to do me another favor, I'll give you those things," the girl shouted as Naruto nodded and untied her. She then got the things Naruto asked for, faster than he ever thought possible, and put them in his sack. "Wait right here," she shouted as she ran back into a back room, and ran back out carrying a kunai. "Could you please sign this?" she shouted as Naruto nodded and began signing the kunai. "So who do I make this out to?" Naruto asked as the girl giggled. "My name's Tenten," Tenten shouted as Naruto signed her name, and she squealed. "Oh my god, I'm showing this to everyone back at the academy when it starts, even Lee," she shouted as Naruto left. "Thank you?" she shouted as she walked into the back room. Naruto quickly snuck into the same alley he snuck out of, trying to avoid being caught with his payload. He had to say, that was the easiest robbery he has ever committed ever. I mean, no one has actually wanted him to steal from them before. Hell, maybe his life was finally getting just a little bit better. How something was bound to screw up eventually, something always does. Anyway, after coming back to his hideout and dropping off his new supply of kunai and shuriken, and then went for the next target, a new pair of ninja sandals. So Naruto went through the alleys again, and found himself in front of the local shoe store of Konoha, where they sold all sorts of shoes, no matter what they were. And Naruto saw in the window a pair of blue and a pair of black shinobi sandals, the ones he was going to steal. Naruto expertly snuck up to the entrance of the shoe store, and then looked in through the door to check to see what the people were doing. He noticed that the only two people in the room were busy, one worker helping some woman try on a pair of sandals, the woman being too fat to reach her own feet. Naruto grimaced as he saw an almost equal look of disgust on the guy's face. Naruto, knowing an easy job when he saw one, so he snuck over to the shoes in the display window, grabbed them, and then snuck out. The shoes may be a little big, but hey, that's life. He once again made his way to his hideout, and hid the shoes in it. Now Naruto only had one last target to visit, the clothing store. Naruto never could get away without being spotted. It was almost impossible when you were carrying clothes in your arms. So he knew he had better be ready to run. As Naruto made his way through, he was practically choosing out what clothes he was going to get. They were going to have to be like his current ones, dark, with lots of pocket space. He learned two things. One, being clothed in nice, bright, primary colors didn't help you when you are trying to escape. He learned this one the hard way. 2. You're going to need pockets if you plan on getting lots of stuff at once. Naruto snuck out of the alley that led to the clothing store, and snuck to the front entrance. He glided inside of the store, and made his way to where they usually had clothes his size, baggy clothes. Once again, not that great of an idea. Naruto looked around for only a second before grabbing at least 3 sets of clothes. The first was a black shirt, which had hanging with it, a pair of cargo pants similar to his own, only a bit less worn, and they tightened around the ankles. The second set was a forest green shirt that went along with a pair of camel brown pants with those weird pockets he usually saw on the sides of the pants that the people who chased him had on. He then picked out something he really didn't want, but he could hear the shopkeeper coming. It was a red-orange shirt, with a pair of blue ninja pants. And for some of the cold nights that could be coming soon, a black, forest green, and blue trench coat. All 3 of them had some dark red spiral on their backs. Naruto piled all 3 of the sets of clothes on top of his arms, and just began making a mad dash for the front door. After all, there was no way in hell he was not going to be at least seen with all of these clothes. Naruto had just made it out of the door, before the owner of the shop called some chunin, and the chase was on. But right now, Naruto wasn't in the mood for a chase. He had a long, and confusing for the most part, day. So Naruto decided to let out the big one. Naruto put all of the clothes he was carrying into one arm, and then grabbed a kunai with the free arm. He then turned his head so he could smile at his pursuers, before cutting open 3 cargo pockets on his left leg, releasing many rusted, old nails, and they scattered onto the ground. Naruto almost went crazy laughing when he heard the string of curses coming from the 2 chunin he had just given permanent feet problems, as he ran into an alley, into safety. By the time Naruto had reached his hideout, he was still snickering about how well that trick worked, and tried to remember to find more nails like that so he could reload that little trick. Naruto laid the clothes by his tent, and then walked into his tent. The calendar Sarutobi had given him he carried in with him, and then marked out the current date, seeing as it was practically sundown. Naruto yawned as he prepared himself for a little trick he had learned during the first half of his second year living in this dump, sleeping with your eyes open. Naruto couldn't count the amount of times during his first year that one of those weird talking dogs would sneak in and start attacking him in his sleep, but he got them back alright, he. But putting that thought aside, Naruto relaxed his body and mind, and a few seconds later his face lost all expression, his eyes all of their mirth, as his head tilted down slightly, falling into a only slightly comforting, yet alert sleep. Omake. Naruto expertly snuck up to the entrance of the shoe store, and doing like he saw some other guy do before him, put his hands to his mouth and began screaming at the top of his lungs. Shoe sale! Shoe sale! Naruto shouted as he looked both ways down the street. Huh. Last time I saw the owner of this place do that, the place was flooded before I could even blink, Naruto thought as suddenly pebbles on the street began clicking around. Naruto this time looked down the streets to see women, of all ages, come running down the streets, huge hearts in their eyes. Not again! Naruto heard from behind him as he turned around to see the shop owner of the store glare at him. I'll get you back for this later, kid. The owner of the store shouted as he locked himself in his back room. Naruto was just about to jump right in with him when just then the store immediately became filled to the brim. Naruto just about suffocated before grabbing the shoes he was looking forward to stealing, and then forcing his way through the almost endless sea of shoe-crazed women, out into the streets. Omake 2. If you haven't seen the shoes video on the internet, you wouldn't understand this one. Naruto knew an easy job when he saw one, so he snuck over to the shoes in the display window, grabbed them, and almost got away before the guy who was trying to get the shoe onto the fat lady. Hey brat, I think you have too many shoes, the guy said as he glared at Naruto, and Naruto glared back. Shut up, Naruto said as he ran out, and the guy's sweat dropped. Oh well, I have bigger problems, literally, the guy said as he looked over to the fat lady, and tried to put the shoes on again, but failed. Miss, these shoes style is kinda small and your feet are really big, the guy said as the fat lady glared at him. Oh, she said before proceeding to strangle him. Omake 3. I'm on a roll. Naruto walked in front of the clothing store, and just as he did at the shoe store, with only a slight modification, put his hand to his mouth and began screaming. Red light savings sale. Everything's 99 off. Everything must go. Naruto shouted as he was suddenly grabbed by the shoulders by the store owner and turned around. Do you have any idea of what you have just done? The guy shouted as Naruto shook his head no. Honey, come on, into the bunker. The guy shouted as they saw his wife running through the store. Sale, 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 sale. She shouted as she picked up random clothes. Oh no, we've lost her. The owner said as he turned back to Naruto. I've never really cared about you, but run. This is too violent a death even for you. The guy shouted as he opened up a section of the floor, jumped into it, and then slammed it shut. Naruto stared before he noticed that a glass of water that was on the counter began shaking. Naruto turned around to find the most terrifying sight of his life. Women were coming from everywhere. From down the street, out of apartment windows, off of roofs, out of the alleys, out of the sewers, hell, they were even parachuting down of the sky. Naruto stared as he tried to run off, but failed before he was trampled to death of the mob of sales-crazed women. The sounds of chirping birds was the first thing to reach Naruto's ears as he woke up. He sat up in his makeshift tent and yawned as he stretched himself out slightly. He got up out of the tent and stretched more completely as he then scratched himself. Naruto yawned as he walked over to his pile of new clothes and picked up the set of black clothes and walked towards the sewer entrance. He opened up the lid and jumped down into the sewers. Naruto navigated his way around the sewers, careful not to allow any of his new clothes to get dragged around in the muck. Naruto finally got to where he needed to get to as he saw a bright light at the end of the long, dark, smelly tunnel. Naruto jumped out of the sewage pipe and landed onto the bank of the river he normally washed up in. Naruto looked up at the sky and saw that the sun had not yet rose above the tree leans, so he had time. Naruto went upstream a couple 100 feet. After all, he wouldn't want to bathe in the crap of the villagers. Naruto flung the new clothes to the side and undressed on the bank of the river. Naruto then jumped right into the water and swam down a couple feet into it. He came back up to the surface, shook himself a bit as he got used to the rather chilly water in the river. After getting used to the water in the river, Naruto floated around a bit, soaking his body in the cleansing water of the river. As sunrise slowly began to approach, the sky beginning to light up slightly, Naruto waded his way through the river water and up to shore. He shook himself dry for a little while before trying on his new clothes. He had to say, they were pretty nice. His shoes and his coat were both a bit oversized, but the shirt and pants were fine. And he really liked these clothes. They were really the first nice things he has had for a very long time. Naruto then thought about the sewer tunnel, so he took off his new shoes and replaced them with the old, and hiked up the legs of his pants to midway up his shins. He didn't want to ruin these things so soon. He made his way back to his hideout and got packing. He got loaded the pockets in his cargo pants with kunai, shuriken, and ninja wire, all the essentials for Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto looked up at the sky again for an idea on the time. He saw the sun was just now rising over the tree line. He had plenty of time. The old timer did say a couple hours, whatever those were, after sunrise. So he might as well get some breakfast and then go to that academy place. Naruto got his trusty burlap sack and ran into town. At this early in the morning, all of the shops were closed, but roadside food places were still open. Since Naruto wanted to get to this academy place early, he decided to find a shop on the way to the academy. It was actually a few blocks later that Naruto found his target. Ichiraku Ramen, what's ramen? Naruto asked as he slowly read the kanji that were on the Ichiraku Ramen shop's flaps. The lights were still off, so Naruto knew they weren't awake. Naruto snuck under the flap and slowly opened the wooden board leading to the kitchen and snuck over to the supplies cabinet. Every roadside food shop had one. Naruto learned this after stealing so many goodies. Naruto opened it up and saw these weird square things. They looked like they were made out of noodles. Naruto picked one up and hit it against the side of a counter a couple times. It was as hard as a rock. Naruto brought it up to his mouth and tried to take a bite. Yuch! This thing is harder than a rock. Naruto semi-shouted as he tossed the uncooked noodle square back into the cupboard. And it's stale. Do people honestly eat that crap? Naruto said as he continued looking through the cabinet, and he found nothing but those noodle squares. What the hell, there's gotta be more, Naruto said as he heard someone begin coming down the stairs. Man, I'm out of time. Naruto thought as he dashed out of the back of the store and back into the streets, figuring breakfast could wait for the day. Meanwhile, old man Ichiraku was just beginning his morning check of the supplies when he noticed something odd. Why are there teeth marks on these noodles? Ichiraku said as he glared at the marks. Damn raccoons. Ichiraku said as he slammed the cabinet closed, and a certain red-headed container of the Ichibi began sneezing like crazy in Suna. Naruto reached the front of the academy and stared at the building in wonder. It wasn't as huge as that tower that the weird Itachi guy took him to, but it was still pretty impressive. Naruto saw that there was no one coming, and that no one was there, so Naruto sat down on a nearby swing and waited for about an hour and a half, wishing now that he had bothered to try and steal something else, when some kids that were older than Naruto came. Naruto looked at these kids, and saw Tenten in with a group of them, showing off the kunai he had signed for her a few days earlier. Then Tenten looked in his direction, saw him, and waved at him. The other kids that were with her looked in Naruto's direction as Naruto waved back, and Tenten explained who he was. After she stopped, the kids, specifically one with long black hair and a ponytail, with huge eyebrows and huge eyes, looked at him in awe before the girls did a fangirl scream of kawaii, and the guys just nodded their heads in his direction. But the huge eyebrow kid just got this flame in his eye that told Naruto that something bad was coming when he would meet this kid in real life. But soon those kids went into the building, and eventually kids who looked about his age came, their parents holding their hands as they walked them to the front of the school. While most of the parents gave him a glare that told him to just die on the spot, few of them looked at him with an appraising look. The ones that glared at him whispered something into their child's ears, all the while glaring at him. But the ones that appraised him simply led their children into the building. Naruto got up off of the swing and went inside the academy building. Naruto walked around in there for a while, trying to find some sign of where he was supposed to go. He saw a Chunin in the hall and, deciding that he might as well take his chances, walked up to him and tugged on his jacket. "Hey, do you know where new kids are supposed to go?" Naruto asked as the Chunin turned around with a slight smile. "Sure, it's the Chunin," began saying as he looked down and saw ITSU. The Chunin shouted as he pointed a finger at Naruto. "You're the one who did this to me," the Chunin shouted as he pointed down to his feet. Naruto swallowed a lump in his throat as he slowly looked down. Yep, it was one of the Chunin he had used the nails on a few days ago. There were so many bandages on his feet they almost looked like a cast. "Now," the Chunin said as he cracked his neck. "For what you did, I'm going to break your legs," the Chunin shouted as he tried to jump on top of Naruto. Naruto jumped back and then made a mad dash backwards away from the Chunin, who, despite being partially taken care of by medic means, was having trouble running after the boy. Naruto rounded a corner and figured that he better give this guy the slip. Naruto saw an open room to his left and figured that the room would do. Naruto slipped inside the room, slammed the sliding door shut, and waited until he heard the footsteps of the Chunin pass. Naruto sighed as he turned around, and was met by the strange looks that many kids his age, and another Chunin with tan skin, dark hair that was in a ponytail, and a scar across his nose, were giving him. Naruto, the kids, and the Chunin looked at each other for a few moments before the Chunin coughed a few times and broke the silence. "Naruto Uzumaki, you're late. Mind giving me an explanation?" the Chunin said as he looked at Naruto with stern eyes. "Well, you see, I was being chased by this Chunin in the hall, so it kinda took me a while to shake him," Naruto said as some of the kids began bursting out laughing, while others looked at him with a "you're right" look. Irika simply put his hand up to silence the kids while looking at Naruto. "Alright, Uzumaki, just get to a seat while I continue roll call," the Chunin said as most of the kids went bug-eyed at what he said. Other either slept, said nothing, or ate, while Naruto sat in a desk that situated him beside this kid with brown hair, with these weird marks on the sides of his face, and a puppy dog that looked strangely familiar to Naruto, and another kid with black hair tied up in a ponytail that was sleeping right next to him. Naruto heard the pup growl to his right, and watched as the kid stroked its head. "Yeah, Akamaru, he's the one who shaved you," the kid said as Naruto's sweat dropped. "Great, I'm sitting beside that dog's master today, just could not get any worse," Naruto said as the sliding door opened and he saw the Chunin that was just chasing him down the hall come in. "Oh, Mizuki, what took you so long?" the tan Chunin said to Mizuki as he walked into the room. "Well, you see, Irika, I was just chasing that street fox through the halls," and Mizuki said as he looked around the room and saw Naruto sitting in the class. "I'll get you later, punk," Mizuki said as he sat down beside Irika, and Naruto just sighed as he looked up at the ceiling. "You're just not giving me any breaks today, are you?" Naruto thought as he looked back down and waited as Irika finished the roll call and looked up at all of them. "Alright everyone, my name is Irika, but you all will call me Irika-sensei," Irika said as Mizuki then sat up. "And my name is Mizuki, and you will call me Mizuki-sensei," Mizuki said as the class nodded. "And we will, for the most part, be your teachers for the rest of your time in the academy. We hope that we can teach you all everything you will need to know in order to become excellent shinobi of Konoha," Irika said as Naruto began to fidget in his desk. He had been waiting for this for the last couple days, and he was excited to finally begin training for the occupation that would change his life. "So would everyone please get the books that are under your desks and open them to the first page," Irika said as Naruto practically face vaulted. "What the hell, the old man told me that we were training to be ninjas," Not bookworms, Naruto thought as he reluctantly got the book out and opened it. It was on Oh Hell. Naruto didn't know what the hell it was about. Great, I can barely read a word of this, no way this day can get any worse, Naruto thought as suddenly Iruka looked up at everyone. Alright then, has anyone here had any experience in learning how to read kanji? Iruka asked as everyone, including Naruto, he had a little experience, raised their hands. Alright then, since all of you know how to read, then there's no point in teaching how to read kanji, Iruka said as Naruto practically banged his head up against the desk. I should have left my hand down, Naruto said as Mizuki said something that he really wasn't paying attention to, but then noticed him when he pointed at him. Why, Uzumaki, thank you for volunteering to read some out loud for us, Mizuki said as Naruto's head snapped up and looked at his still raised hand. I really should have left my hand down, Naruto thought as he looked at Mizuki, who was staring at him. Well, Uzumaki, what are you waiting for? Mizuki said as Naruto gulped. Well, you see, Sneesei, I really don't know how to read too much, Naruto said as Mizuki was about to say something before Iruka cut in. That's fine, just read what you can, Iruka said as Mizuki looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Naruto nodded, looked at the first words in the first page in the book, and began reading. Naruto said as everyone's sweat dropped. And? Go on, Iruka said as Naruto blushed slightly. That's all I can really read in this book, the other words are, Naruto said as everyone in the class began busting out laughing. Naruto blushed even more before sinking back into his seat. As the laughter quieted down, Iruka cleared his throat. Alright then, anyone else wish to read? Iruka said as the hands of other children raised their hands while Naruto sat there, just listening to the kids read out loud, while he heard some make some remarks about him that made him want to beat them across the entire room. Lunchtime. Lunchtime finally rolled around at noon, and Naruto was starving. Embarrassing yourself in front of entire class, and trying to read along when you could barely read at all made a kid hungry. Add to that, he didn't have breakfast this morning, and you had one amazingly starving Naruto. Naruto decided to get himself some lunch, but since the academy didn't provide lunches, he was going to have to steal some lunch. Naruto looked over to the door where Iruka and Mizuki were and saw that they were drawn into a deep conversation with each other. Naruto saw his moment to escape and took it, running out of the fence into town. Meanwhile, Mizuki's and Iruka's conversation was just getting interesting. So Iruka, what was up with sparing the demon brat? Don't tell me you're going soft on us, Mizuki said as Iruka sighed. Mizuki, we are academy teachers, that means that no matter who comes through these halls, even if it is him, we must teach equally. I'm not going soft on you all, I'm just following the code handed to us by Hokage-sama, Iruka said as Mizuki chuckled. Whatever, Iruka, but I just hope that you remember what that thing did to your mom and dad, Mizuki said as Iruka lowered his head at his parents' mention and Mizuki walked off. Iruka had not forgotten what the Kyuubi had done to his family, or presently lack thereof, nor does he forget his hatred of the beast. But, as he said just a few minutes ago, the demon was now an academy student, and as a teacher Iruka was to teach the brat as he would teach any other academy student, no matter how painful it would be to him. Iruka gave a quick glance over the entire area, but did not notice that Naruto had slipped out while he was talking with Mizuki. Naruto was walking through the streets closest to the academy. He would only have about an hour to steal some food, shake the Chunin that would most likely be chasing him after he stole some food, eat, and then get back to the academy before they would notice he was gone. Simple enough, Naruto thought as he got to a dango shop. Naruto cracked his neck and walked nonchalantly into the dango shop. A few seconds after Naruto entered the shop, there were sounds of struggle, dishes breaking, and curses flying. A few seconds after that, Naruto ran out of the dango shop, 10 balls of dango in his arms, being followed by the shop owner who was swinging a broom around. A few seconds after that, 2 Chunin were on the scene, and after a few seconds of talking to the dango shop owner, they were chasing Naruto. Naruto smirked as he watched the Chunin try to catch up with him, and was about to speed up until one very bad thing happened. Remember the shoes that were a couple sizes too big? He tripped because of them. Naruto fell face forward into the road and dragged on a couple feet, the dango he had stolen spilling all over the ground. Naruto got up and began running again, not caring about the food, but being more concerned about his well-being. Naruto ran, slipping up thanks to his shoes every now and then. Naruto, though, saw his salvation, an alley on the side of the street. He smirked as he ran into the alley, and he was just about 5 feet into that alley before he tripped again. Naruto tripped and fell face first into a puddle. He tried to get up and get away, but one of the Chunin grabbed the back of his jacket, then grabbed the back of his head, and slammed him, face first, into a wall. Well, what do we have here? One Chunin said as the other one caught up. Well, it would appear as though to be the street fox, my dear friend, the other Chunin said as they both grinned. Say, why don't you hand him over to me? I was always better at interrogation than you were anyway. The second Chunin said as the first one nodded, and threw Naruto to the second Chunin, who caught Naruto by the shoulders and then slammed him, back first, into the other side of the alley, causing Naruto to gasp in pain. Hey, these are some nice clothes that you stole. Tell you what, Fox, we won't punish you too badly if you show us where the rest of the clothes you stole a few days back are. The Chunin said as both he and his partner began laughing hysterically. Naruto hated these stupid Chunin, he hated their just goddamn cocky attitudes. Naruto gritted his teeth before smiling at the Chunin. Go to hell, Naruto said as he spat in the Chunin's face. The Chunin glared at Naruto for a moment before a small smirk on his face. You know what, Uzumaki? I've had a rather bad day today. You haven't exactly brightened it up, the Chunin said as he cracked his neck. So allow me a moment or two to relieve some stress, and we'll call it even for your crime, and spitting in my face. Before the blonde thief could reply to his kind offer, the Chunin immediately slammed his knee into Naruto's stomach, causing the poor boy to gasp for breath again. After a few minutes of slapping Naruto around, the Chunin working out some of his frustrations on the street fox's body, Naruto was tossed down onto the dirt, the two Chunin just shrugging. Alright, that'll do for now. Later, street fox, don't try this kind of crap again, the two Chunin said as they immediately sped off, Naruto coughing and wheezing as he tried to regain his breath. Naruto slowly lifted himself off of his stomach and grunted as he got back onto his feet, looking over to a building's window to try and catch his reflection. Naruto also saw that his face was covered in bruises, the two Chunin doing quite the number on his face. Ordinarily the blonde was used to this, after all, it was the risk of survival. Get caught, get a small smacking around. Still, Naruto's day hadn't been good at all. In fact, the little blonde boy felt terrible before he had run into the Chunin. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment, trying to hold in tears that he knew would be coming before he felt a warm feeling rush all over his body. As the warm feeling left, Naruto opened his eyes to see that he was completely fine. Naruto touched his own face to see if it were real, and it was. Naruto stood up, albeit a bit shakily, and began walking back to the academy, where it was safe for now. Naruto arrived at the academy just as the children began heading back inside. He saw Iruka at the doors, who saw him coming. Oh, there you are, Uzumaki, please hurry up, class is about to start again, Iruka said as Naruto only nodded and carried himself back into the academy. Iruka noticed Naruto walking with a slight limp all over, but just shrugged, thinking he must have had some trouble on the swing, or has some trouble with the other children. After the academy, classes at the academy finally let out, bringing with them the first-year students, who were glad that such a boring day was over. They ran out of the academy building, and they ran to their parents who were waiting with them, carrying umbrellas with them for some odd reason. Naruto walked out, his limp gone, and looked upon them. Most of the parents, as before, looked at him with a glare, but also with an amused smile as their children told them about Naruto's inability to read. But Naruto didn't care about the parents for now. Iruka had talked to him after class and told him that he would not allow such ignorance into the army of Konoha, and would give him lessons on reading kanji after school. Naruto knew it was an insult from the really, really big word at the beginning of the sentence, but he really didn't care. As the parents left, Naruto walked outside of the fence that surrounded the academy and heard thunder go off. Naruto looked up in time to see rain begin pouring down on his body. Naruto looked down both sides of the street to see the parents open the umbrellas and bring their children under the umbrellas with them. Naruto's head lowered as he began walking down the street. His stomach was growling loudly, but Naruto kept on walking, only really doing any other movement other than walking when quickly looting a melon from the melon stand, without the idiot even noticing due to him being so busy with getting the roof of the cart on to protect his precious melons. Naruto walked down the alleys to his hideout, which was pretty much really, really wet when he got there. Naruto knew trying to start a fire in the rain would be out of the question, so he just went inside of his tent and began eating a meal he had been waiting for all day today. Today was one of the worst days he's had in a long time. And this academy wasn't nearly as exciting as the old man made it out to be, but Naruto was going to have to go with it. If he ever wanted a life better than eating melon in the rain, then he would have to be tough, he would have to be strong, he would have to never give up no matter how bad things would get. 5 months since last chapter. It was a cool, January night in Konoha, and the citizens were out on the streets doing their normal routines. Suddenly, white, crystal objects began falling from the sky. It was snowing, a very rare occurrence in Konoha. You see, there's a reason why Konoha is in the land of fire, and that's because, normally, it hardly ever snows. Now I could get into this big discussion about Konoha being the farthest south of all the nations, and it having very few large bodies of water which would allow it to snow often like in Kiri. But hey, that would bore you to death now, wouldn't it? Anyway, it snowed throughout the entire night, and by morning all of Konoha was covered in not a sheet, not a pillow, but a blanket of snow. People were out on the streets, shoveling snow off of the roads, or trying to save any produce they were selling from the cold stuff. Academy children, who normally would have classes at the academy, were out playing in the white stuff. Since snow was such a rare thing in Konoha, academy children would normally be excused from classes to play, playing games of ninja with snowballs instead of wooden kunai and wooden shuriken. Now children weren't the only ones who enjoyed a winter wonderland. Shinobi of Konoha also enjoyed spending time in the crystallized clouds of fluff. Some shinobi would use snowballs instead of kunai to practice their accuracy, while others, specifically ones in green spandex, would make snowmen in the shape of a certain silver-haired, cycloptic ninja, and proceed to practice taijutsu on them, practically melting them before he touched them with his glorious, wintertime, flames of youth. Other shinobi saw the snow as a good method for practicing water-style jutsu. But once again, these two groups aren't the only ones who enjoy the winter wonderland that was brought to them every few years. Citizens also loved the snowy weather. Many families would make time to take their children out and teach them winter games, like sledding, snowball fighting, and snowman building. While other civilians would turn the weather into a money-making business by selling snow cones, and other would sell sleds they had made for such occasions. Also, surprisingly, the snow made for a very romantic background for people. While people from other countries thought that spring and flowers were more romantic, people from Konoha, who were around the stuff so often that they would barely even notice it, thought winter and snow was beautiful. Many older couples enjoying the winter wonderland in each other's arms, while younger ones would go out into the woods and let's say that what they did was so hot that it melted the snow around them in an instant, and almost caused the grass underneath the snow to burst into flames. Even the Hokage, an old man, who by all means should hate the snow because of arthritis pains, loved the white weather, and would take the day off from his office job to enjoy the rare occurrence. Yes, everyone in Konoha liked the snow a lot, but Naruto Uzumaki, who lived in his hideout in Konoha, did not. Now why does he hate the snow? Well, to be honest, nobody does know. It could be that his ninja sandals were too big, or that his hair would freeze over, like a wig. But I think the most likely reason of all was that his hypothalamus gland was 3 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his gland or his frozen wig, he sat in his hideout with a blanket around him, shivering as if he only wore the leaf of a fig. Hey, would you stop all that rhyming? Naruto suddenly shouted at the narrator. Oh, I'm sorry, the narrator said as he cleared his throat. Now on with the chapter, the narrator said as his voice slowly faded out of existence. The now 6-year-old Naruto sat in the middle of his hideout, though he had a blanket around his shoulder and was beside a campfire. He was shivering widely. He sat there, shivering, and every so often he would sneeze. How he hated the snow, and how he hated the cold. The snow took away every advantage he had in the clear, non-snowy days. He could not sneak around, cause nothing he had was white, he stuck out like a sore thumb anywhere. Also, all of the animals were hidden in the snow, so hunting was hard. His easy source of water, for drinking and bathing, was frozen over, or too cold to even get into. GGGG god damn it. It's SSSSS so cold. Naruto stuttered out from the cold as he sneezed, and rubbed his nose, which was turning red. I hate the cold, Naruto said as he sneezed again. And I hate snow sneezing again, Naruto continued his rant. I can't go in anywhere cause I'd be exposed, Naruto said as he sneezed once more. It's cold, Naruto shouted as he sneezed 3 times. I can be barely hunt, and when I do catch something I can't cook it. Naruto shouted as we see that he's roasting a piece of rabbit meat. Well, roasted would be the word that would be used had the meat not been completely frozen. So I guess you could say that he was thawing a piece of rabbit meat over a few embers. Every time he made a fire, the surrounding snow would melt, and the water would put the fire out. And it's cold, Naruto shouted again as he sneezed 5 times. I can't bathe cause the freaking river can't stay a river. And it's cold, Naruto shouted as went on a sneezing spree. Naruto sat there for a second. His little rant warmed him up a little bit, but only for a little while. Naruto snorted a little bit, the mucus in his nose building up again. He sneezed again, and rubbed his nose as he tried to take a bite out of the frozen rabbit meat. OWW, Naruto said as he put the rabbit meat back over the fire. Naruto remembered this morning, he had woken up and found the snow covering the entire ground. He hated snow, and today was looking forward to going to the academy. For the past 5 months Naruto had been reading, and reading, and reading. He hated it. And he also had those lessons from Irika for the first 3 months. However, at the end of the 3rd month, he learned, mostly it was so freaking boring, but he put up with it, because he knew that the only way to get the hell out of the hellhole called his hideout. But, so far, nothing had been as Sarutobi said it would be. Sarutobi said that he would meet kids his age, no one would talk to him. Either they thought he was weird, or their parents told them not to come near him, or maybe even a combination of the two. Though he didn't really know the kids, he knew mostly about them. There was that one weird kid with the mutt that bit him that he shaved that sat right next to him. They were Kiba, Inuzuka, and Akamaru. There was a kind of chemistry between them that caused them to absolutely hate each other's guts. Naruto also thought that mutt Akamaru was freaking annoying too. I mean, it was a little dog, and you know how annoying little dogs are when they barks. It's not rough kind of bark, it's a ipe kind of bark, the annoying kind. They absolutely hated each other, but when Naruto would study, Kiba would try to distract him, but it was also vice versa. Then there was the kid on the other side of him, the lazy one with the spiky ponytail, Shikamaru Nara. Naruto never really talked to him, and he never even talked to Naruto. So Naruto never really had any problems with him, and he didn't know a thing about him. Then there was this kid with spiky black hair who always wore glasses and this trench coat, Shino Abdurrahim. They never really talked either, but he knew that he didn't like him. He didn't know how he could tell, but for some reason whenever he got near him he heard this buzzing sound, and when he would get really close, it would get louder, and louder, and louder. Something about that just told him stay away. Then there was the plump one with all of that food he always had. No, stop drooling. Anyway, his name was Chujiya Kimichi, and he has these weirdo swirls on his cheeks. And he eats, that's all Naruto knew. Then there are these two girls, one's blonde and the other has pink hair that she covers her forehead with. Why she covers it I don't know. Anyway, that Ino girl is really popular, and the other one, well, I don't know too much about her, but she cries a lot, maybe someone died. Anyway, Naruto didn't talk to either one at all, Ino because he couldn't even get close to her without being pushed around by her friends, and Sakura, well, he didn't know her. Then there's Hinata Hyuga. Like a few others, Naruto didn't know a thing about her except that she has those eyes. They're kinda cool but weird too. Anyway, that brings me to the final one he knows, Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto figured out that his brother is the one that chased me that one day. He smiles quite a bit, but he avoids Naruto. Remember, this is a while before the massacre. Anyway, he hasn't really talked to anyone, and there's Eno's super cool ninja training. But Iruka said that they would get a surprise today, and Naruto was a little anxious, but it snowed and now he had to wait. And what's worse is that he walked all the way to the academy, in the snow, and then he had to walk all the way back to his hideout, in the snow, after he figured out that it was closed for the day, which only took him about an hour of standing out in the snow to figure out. Naruto sneezed some more, and continued trying to warm up the meat. Naruto took another bite, and when Naruto could finally bite through it he began devouring the meat. The seal. Inside the complex sewers that was Naruto's mindscape, well, it was blue, and the water was frozen. We hear sneezes coming from somewhere in the sewer, the sneezes being loud and deep. As we travel through we arrive at the seal, which has icicles hanging off of it. We check inside to see Kyubi, the great nine-tailed fox, shaking like a leaf in the wind, and with icicles hanging out of his nose. Achoo! The great Kyubi sneezed as he used one of his tails to slick the icicles hanging out of his nose away. Gods be damned. This is supposed to be the land of fire. Not the land of snowy winters. Achoo! Kyubi shouted as he continued sneezing and shivering. I hate the cold, it freezes my fur, Kyubi said as we saw that, indeed, his fur was frozen in place. I am supposed to be a biju of fire, I hate the cold. Achoo! Kyubi sneezed again as he sat there, continuing to shake like there was no tomorrow. Naruto's hideout. Naruto sat in his hideout a good 5 minutes after finishing the partially cooked rabbit meat. Naruto sat there, just shivering until just got sick of sitting around and being cold. Damn it, I do enough sitting at the academy, I am going to exercise, at least it will warm me up, Naruto said as he ran to his stack of clothes and put on another jacket. He already had 2 on, might as well put on a 3rd one. There we go, now to go running, Naruto said out loud to himself as he began going at a jogging pace. Konoha Park. Sarutobi was enjoying this wondrous day. There was white snow covering the normally green trees and the bare roads of Konoha. Though the flowers were no longer in bloom, most of them not even being alive anymore, the snow made for a wonderful background in the normally green Konoha. He took a deep breath of the cool air and expelled it, feeling the slight tingle from the cold air. Sarutobi took out his pipe and lit it up, and began walking again before he heard the sound of snow crunching behind him. He turned to look behind him, and smiled to see Naruto running towards him. Sarutobi waved while smiling, and when Naruto saw him he did the same, only he kept on running, and he slipped on some ice that was on the park's path, and since he didn't exactly have his arms to balance him out, so Naruto shouted as he landed flat on his ass. Sarutobi chuckled a bit as Naruto slowly stood up, rubbing his sore, cold rear end. Sarutobi walked over to him, and they both smiled at each other. Well, hello there, Naruto. Decided to take a walk on this fine, snowy day? Sarutobi said as Naruto raised an eyebrow at him. Fine? What's so good about this white crap? Naruto said as Sarutobi raised the eyebrow back at Naruto. You couldn't possibly mean that, Naruto. I mean, this snow doesn't come very often, many people enjoy it. Sarutobi said as Naruto looked a bit shocked. People actually enjoy this stuff? Naruto said as Sarutobi chuckled. Naruto, you can't honestly tell me that you've never played in the snow before. Sarutobi said as Naruto kinda stared at him. You have played in the snow before, right? Sarutobi said as Naruto just kept on staring at him with I don't have a clue what you're talking about look. You're being serious, aren't you? Sarutobi said as Naruto nodded and Sarutobi kind of chuckled. Well, come on then, it's my day off, I might as well teach you. Sarutobi said as Naruto raised an eyebrow. Teach me what? Naruto said as Sarutobi ruffled his hair. To enjoy this kind of weather. Sarutobi said as Naruto almost began laughing at such a crazy idea. Him, enjoy the snow? Hell would probably freeze over before he began enjoying the snow. But Naruto decided to humor the old man and followed him. Naruto and Sarutobi walked out into the middle of the woods, and Sarutobi turned around to face Naruto, a smile upon his old, wrinkled face. Then suddenly, he pointed behind Naruto with widened eyes. Hey look! It's a deer with a broken leg caught in the bushes! Sarutobi shouted as Naruto spun around, pulling out a kunai while drooling like crazy. Where? Naruto shouted as he looked around for the prey. Then suddenly, something unexpected happened. He got nailed in the back of his head with some slushy ball of crap, getting hit so hard that he fell to the ground. When Naruto stood back up, he felt the back of his head, brought some of the slushy crap into his hand, and looked at it. Snow? Naruto said as he turned around to see the aged Hokage giving him a wide grin, while tossing a ball of snow up and down in his hand. And yet another falls to the allure of a meal, Sarutobi said jokingly as Naruto got back up and rubbed the back of his head. What the hell was that, old man? Naruto shouted as Sarutobi threw another ball of snow, only this time it hit him in his face. What did I tell you about language, Naruto? Sarutobi said as Naruto whipped the snow off of his face. And as for what I threw at you, it is called a snowball. You see, you make a snowball by bending down, Sarutobi said as he bent over. Getting some snow, Sarutobi said as he picked up a large pile of snow. Packing it together, Sarutobi said as he packed the snow, and Naruto watched, completely entranced by this snowball. And then you, Sarutobi said as he threw yet another snowball at Naruto, and began laughing at his own antics. You think you're so smart, old man? Naruto shouted as he scooped up some snow, made it into a ball, and threw it at Sarutobi, who just leaned to the side to dodge it. Sorry, Naruto, but you'll have to, Sarutobi began before he got nailed in the face by a snowball thrown by Naruto. Sarutobi blinked and saw that Naruto was cracking his neck and hands before. Naruto shouted as he began throwing snowball after snowball after snowball at Sarutobi. And Sarutobi was struck time and time again, but eventually the flurry of snowballs became an entire freaking avalanche. Several snowballs were thrown at Sarutobi, so much so that he was eventually covered in snow, all except for his Hokage hat and pipe. Sarutobi looked on in shock at Naruto and his skills with snow. Also, Naruto had used so much snow that the area around him was completely bare. Now what have you got to say to that, old man? Naruto shouted as Sarutobi smirked underneath all of the snow. Sarutobi perked up his amazing ninja hearing and heard the sound of kids in the nearby section of the woods, and not just any kids. What do I have to say to that, Naruto? Sarutobi said as he shook off the snow and walked towards Naruto, who was smirking his little heart out. Well, all I have to say is, he said as he suddenly picked Naruto up by the jacket with both hands. Have fun! Sarutobi said as he spun around 3 times, and threw Naruto towards the area he had heard the, as he called it, Naruto Uzumaki Street Fox Fan Club. Well, that's my good deed for the day, Sarutobi said as he took a deep drag of his pipe and then began walking again. Deawayawam, you old Maoan! Could be heard as Naruto flew through the sky. Meanwhile, in another clearing, children of the upper class were playing around in the snow. We see a younger Rock Lee running up to a younger Tenten, and was about to say something before a blur screamed before. Crash. The blur landed headfirst into the snow, going so deep into it that only his legs stuck out of the snow. The children's sweat dropped at this, and began to slowly walk towards the pair of legs that were sticking out of the ground. Lee and Tenten ended up being the ones chosen to pull whatever the hell it was out of the ground, and see what it was. They each got a leg, and began pulling on each leg, and eventually they pulled Naruto out of the ground. Naruto shook around a few times to get the snow out of his hair, before meeting the yes of the kids who were looking at him with widened eyes and slack jaws. Hi. Naruto said as suddenly he found himself surrounded by every second year in the clearing. Oh my god, it's you! The street fox! One kid shouted as Naruto kinda backed up. Are you here to play with us? Another shouted before someone tapped his shoulder. Naruto turned around to see Tenten. Hey Naruto, remember me? Tenten asked as Naruto tapped his chin for a second. Oh yeah, you're the girl that I gave that signed kunai to, Naruto said as she shook her head up and down several times. By the way, what did you do with it? Naruto asked as Tenten got a thoughtful look on her face. I put it in a case so I could preserve it, Tenten thought as she smiled. Oh, just keeping it around, it's going to be worth a lot one day, Tenten said as Naruto smiled before he felt another person tap him on the shoulder. Naruto turned around this time and saw the big-eyebrowed, bug-eyed kid that had those flames in his eyes a few months ago. Hello Street Fox, my name is Rock Lee. Lee almost shouted as Naruto stared at this kid's eyebrows. They look like caterpillars, Naruto thought as suddenly a snowflake fell onto one of Lee's eyebrows, causing it to move around a bit as Naruto kept on staring with even wider eyes. Maybe they are caterpillars, Naruto thought as Lee continued speaking. And I would like to ask you something, Lee said as Naruto raised his eyebrow. Okay, shoot, Naruto said as Lee nodded. A year ago, during a practice session, I, as well as everyone else, discovered that I am unable to use either ninjutsu or genjutsu. You know what those are, correct? Lee asked as Naruto nodded. Iruka had taught everyone a little bit about ninjutsu and genjutsu. They haven't taught them a thing about how to use them, but he knew what they were. Anyway, I'm wondering, do you think I have the ability to become an excellent ninja with just taijutsu? Lee said as everyone began chuckling around him. Sure, Naruto said as everyone stopped chuckling and looked at Naruto. I mean, I know no ninjutsu or genjutsu, and look at me. If you get fast enough and strong enough, you may be able to become a ninja, I'm sure, Naruto said as everyone's eyes went wide and they all stared at Naruto. What? Naruto asked as Lee suddenly started crying. Thank you for your words of encouragement, Street Fox. I promise that I will become an excellent ninja, Lee shouted as he began doing kicks into the air. I will train my hardest. First I will start by running 5 laps around the academy without stopping. And if I cannot do that, I will do 100 push-ups. And if I cannot do that, Lee ranted on as everyone just stared at him with a growing sweat drop on the back of their heads. Hope he doesn't make a habit out of this, they all thought as Lee suddenly stopped his rants and turned to Tenten. Oh Tenten, before I forget, where's Niji? I thought you said has invited him to come and play in the snow with us already? Lee said as Tenten shrugged. Beats me, after I told him he just said that he had to bring someone along with him, Tenten said as suddenly they heard a barely audible shout from behind them. They all turned around, to see 2 figures, one taller than the other, running towards them at a more civilian speed. Cliffhanger. Oh, make one. Sure, Naruto said as everyone stopped chuckling and looked at Naruto. I mean, I know no ninjutsu or genjutsu, and look at me. If you get fast enough and strong enough, you may be able to become a ninja, I'm sure, Naruto said as everyone's eyes went wide and they all stared at Naruto. Thus is the decree of Street Fox, Naruto shouted as everyone dropped onto their knees. Yes, Street Fox, we will obey, they all said as Naruto quickly made a pile of snow and stood upon it. Good, my children. Now go and wreak havoc in Konoha, Naruto shouted as all of the upper class nodded and ran into Konoha. An hour later, the sounds of chaos could be heard. Naruto stood upon his pile of snow in the clearing and laughed like a madman. And that day was forever remembered as the beginning of the STC, Street Fox cult. Hey Niji! How come it's been taking you so long to get here? Lee shouted as the Niji figure, Naruto assumed, gave him an annoyed look. As Niji and the other person, who was a girl, approached, Niji stood straight, while the girl took some deep breaths. Who's she, Niji? Lee asked as Niji sighed. This is my cousin, Hinata-sama. I couldn't come without bringing her, it's my duty, Niji said as the girl stopped taking deep breaths and looked up. Naruto immediately recognized the girl as the Hinata from his class. She was wearing a light purple, heavy, snow jacket, with some snow pants and some mittens. He noticed that her wear was very different from this Niji kid's, cause he only had on a very worn snow jacket, with most of its color gone, and torn snow pants, with old ratty mittens. Naruto looked at them both before he spoke. Hey, I know you, you're in my class, aren't you? Naruto asked as the girl simply nodded. Who's this kid? Niji asked bluntly as Tenten and Lee smirked. That's right, you were sick the first day of the academy, weren't you, Niji? Tenten asked cheekily as Niji nodded and hers, along with Lee's smirk grew. Well Niji, this is Lee began saying as he leaned towards Niji and began whispering in his ear. Niji nodded a few times as Lee spoke, before his eyes immediately widened and he backed up and stared at Lee. You mean he's? Niji said as Lee nodded. But he's just. Niji said as Tenten began nodding as well. Niji began staring at Naruto, which made Naruto a bit uncomfortable for a moment, before bowing in front of him. Hello Street Fox-sama, my name is Niji Hyuga. It is nice to finally meet a Niji said as he looked up at Naruto. Kids such as yourself. Niji said as Naruto stared a bit wide-eyed before smirking and rubbing the back of his head. Hey, nice to meet you too and please call me Naruto. Naruto said as Niji nodded and Lee tensed up again. So, shall we begin? Lee shouted as Naruto raised an eyebrow. Start what? Naruto asked as everyone looked at him. Oh yeah, well you see we planned a snowball fight earlier this morning. Would you like to join us STR Naruto-san? Lee shouted as everyone excitedly began asking him to join. Naruto smirked as he scratched the back of his head. Well I don't know Naruto said cheekily as everyone began moaning, even Niji sighed a bit, and Hinata just stared a little. Naruto smiled a fox smile as he looked at them. Alright, but only because you all asked so nicely. Naruto said as lots of kids began cheering and they all tensed up. Alright then everyone Tenten began saying as she looked around and everyone nodded. Hide! Tenten shouted as she, Lee, and most of the other kids ran into the forest, while Niji grabbed Hinata's hand and ran into the trees. Naruto simply stood in the middle of the clearing and watched as he cracked his knuckles and smirked. This is gonna be fun! Naruto shouted as he cracked his neck, remaining in the middle of the clearing. The forest. Lee stared at Naruto and smirked as he watched Naruto stay his ground. Naruto-san. Your bravery is admirable. But I'm afraid that it will be your downfall. Lee shouted as he suddenly heard steps coming from behind him. He quickly turned around, to see Tenten, with no snowballs. Tenten, why aren't you armed to attack me and how did you find me? Lee asked as Tenten sighed as she shrugged. Well first off Lee, I could hear your rant from about a mile away, and for why I'm not armed Tenten left off as Lee raised an eyebrow. Because I told her not to arm herself yet. Lee heard come from his right as he looked to see Niji and Hinata come towards him. We're planning on waiting for the other to attack Street Fox together, they stand a better chance of taking him down together, rather than do it separately. Niji said as Tenten nodded. However, we'll wait behind so we can get our own piece of him, should they fail. Niji said as Tenten nodded again. Really? Cool. Lee said as Tenten and Niji sighed. I mean, with the stories we've been told, I think that this would be the best plan of action, eh? Lee said as Hinata tugged on Niji's robe. What is it Hinata-sama? Niji asked as Hinata kinda backed up and then tried to squeak out a few answers. After repeatedly failed attempts, Niji sighed as he continued staring at her. What is it Hinata-sama? Niji asked, annoyance apparent on his voice. Hinata widened her eyes before looking at Niji again. Who is this Street Fox? Hinata asked as Lee and Tenten gasped loudly as they stared at Niji. Niji, you have not told her about Street Fox. Tenten shouted as Niji winced. Well, my cousin and I don't really ever talk too much, Niji said as Hinata nodded along with him. Lee straightened up and turned his head away from Niji. Niji, I am ashamed of you. As a member of our class, and our unofficial club, your rights as a member depended on you telling one person about the Street Fox. Lee said as Tenten nodded and Niji sighed. Well, let's tell her now then. Niji said as they nodded and all turned to Hinata, who shrank underneath their gaze. You see Hinata-sama, that boy there is a person in the village commonly referred to as the Street Fox. Niji said as Hinata nodded. We all first heard of him back during a day at the academy. One of our teachers came into class, covered in a bit of dirt, and looking a bit depressed. Niji started as Tenten nodded and jumped in front of him. Yeah, and when our other teacher asked him what happened, he only said one thing. Tenten said before she paused, building up dramatic tension. She then bent down towards Hinata and got close to her ear. Street Fox. She whispered in a highly conspiratorial tone. She then backed up and continued. Anyway, after that we asked who this Street Fox person is. Tenten said as Lee then jumped in front of her to continue for her. At first no one would tell us, but then when we found people who would, what we learned, Lee said as Tenten got beside him. Was very, Tenten said as Niji got next to her. Incredible. Niji said, shocking Hinata slightly with his minor amount of enthusiasm. Lee then jumped forwards, shocking Hinata a bit. The Street Fox is in fact the most skilled of all thieves in Konoha. Lee shouted as he backed up and placed a hand on his chin. Now I know what you're thinking, but aren't thieves bad? Well, that would be true, if we were talking about any other thief. He is an honorable thief, only stealing during the day when people can see him, and never harming an innocent person. He is also a master of the steal and the chase," Lee shouted as Tenten pushed him out of the way. Rumor has it that the street fox has stolen from various food, clothing, and ninja supplies stores, almost every single time getting away, Tenten said as Hinata began listening intently. But every time he was caught, he would always somehow survive his encounters and come back the next day. It's even said that he has gotten away from both high-level Chunin and low-level Jonin, Tenten said as Niji then calmly walked in front of her. Rumor has it that the street fox has the ability to jump off the sides of buildings, disappearing in an instant, not leaving a trace of himself behind, and yet show up a few hours later without a single scratch on him, Niji said as Hinata's eyes widened as Niji continued. Another one his nicknames is also Shadow Fox, for it has been rumored that he has the ability to slip in and out of the shadows of Konoha, without even being noticed, Niji said as Hinata became enthralled with the story. But whatever you call him, Street Fox, Niji said as Lee stood beside him. Shadow Fox, Lee said as Tenten jumped beside him. Or even a dirty thief, Tenten said as they all brought their fist up. One thing's for sure, they all said at once. That the street foxes, they all said as they began turning around. Naruto Uzumaki, they all shouted as they pointed at Naruto, who was still in the middle of the field waiting for someone to start throwing snowballs. At his point, Tenten had stars in her eyes, while Lee had flames in his, and Niji was just smirking. Hinata was starstruck. She couldn't believe these stories, someone her own age with such an amazing reputation among the older kids, especially Niji, who wasn't all that impressed by anything at all. But Hinata just couldn't be convinced. Nina Niji-san, Hinata said as Niji, Lee, and Tenten looked at her. Oh, how can someone Lee like him be this amazing person? Hinata asked as all three of them looked at her with surprised, or in Niji's case, slightly surprised looks. Then Tenten just smirked as she put her hand on her chin and gave her a "oh you don't know look." Well, Hinata-san, if you don't believe us, just watch. The first step of the plan was to send out a scout to check out how good he is, Tenten said as Niji nodded and Lee just shook his head up and down. That's a good idea indeed, you two, Lee shouted as they all walked towards the edge, Hinata walking with them. Back with Naruto, he was sitting there, still very impatient to get this fight started. He would have thought that it would have been more exciting with people close to his own age rather than the old man, but this was boring, very, very boring. Naruto just began yawning as he suddenly heard someone come from behind him. He looked back to see some kid rushing him, a snowball in his hand. He threw the snowball at Naruto and Naruto closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them he saw a stone hurtling at him. For a moment Naruto's eyes narrowed for a moment before the snowball came very, very close to him. Naruto, the snowball in his right hand, did a quick spin around, and then chucked it back at the kid who threw it at him, hitting him in the face, and knocking him flat onto the ground. Naruto smirked. Those years of dodging and catching stuff in midair was coming in handy. Niji, Tenten, Lee, and Hinata stared at what just happened. First off, Naruto, the street fox, just grabbed something out of midair, and then sent it hurtling back to the kid who threw it. The kid was currently crawling out of the area, having been hit, and effectively knocked out of the game. Then Lee just smirked at Hinata in a told you kind of way. Naruto just cracked his neck as he picked up two snowballs, putting one in each hand. He smirked, and then threw both snowballs into separate trees. A few seconds after that, two kids fell out of the trees, and onto the ground. Come on, do you think you could hide from me? I've hunted moose that made less noise than you two did, Naruto shouted in a boastful tone as he smiled his great big fox smile. Naruto had to say, it felt good being able to boast about something without getting his ass kicked. He liked it a lot. Come on, I can take all of you losers on, Naruto shouted as he thrust his fist into the air and smiled a huge fox smile. Then all of the kids, with the exception of Niji, Lee, Tenten, and Hinata, jumped out of their hiding spots, holding snowballs in their hands. Oh damn, Naruto said out loud as his sweat dropped. The kids threw tons of snowballs at Naruto, coming from all angles at him. Naruto looked around for some hole in their defenses, and when he didn't find one he decided to make one. Naruto quickly dived into the ground, and began tunneling under the snow. Everyone was shocked as they looked on at the spot where Naruto dived down into the snow. All of them thinking, is the snow really that deep? But then they began thinking, well, he was kinda short. Then all of a sudden, one of the kids were dragged down under the snow. Everyone panicked for a moment, and everyone decided that maybe staying on the ground wasn't exactly safe, so they all climbed up into the trees. When they all got up there, everything was silent for a moment. Well, that was before they heard muffled shouts and looked in the direction in which they came. They saw that the street fox had gotten behind one of them while they were in the trees, and now he was falling backwards out of the tree. He and the kid he caught fell into the snow, not leaving a trace besides the entrance he created. Meanwhile, Naruto crawled out of the snow about 20 yards away, smirking as he pulled the kid out along with him. Naruto was excited. He was really freaking these kids out with his tricks, he thought. Naruto had not had so much fun in his entire life, and this was useful. He was learning tricks that he could have never thought up of if he just stayed huddled up in his hideout, and he was scaring this kid shitless with his cunning tricks. Now how to knock the rest of the kids out of the game. He already pulled 2 of his last-minute tricks, maybe he could come up with another one. Naruto snickered as he thought up of his next trick, and he dug under the snow again. Meanwhile, the kids were in the trees, now even more alert than ever. If the street fox was able to climb a tree without any of them noticing, who knew what else he could do? Then they all noticed a little tunnel trail forming, obviously Naruto digging under the ground. One kid jumped out of the tree, smirking a ton, and then shoved his hand into the snow, grabbed a handful of something, and then pulled a street fox out of the snow. Naruto was struggling to get out of this kid's grip, but the kid had a pretty solid grip on him. "Well, I gotcha, street fox," he shouted as he leaned forward. "So how are you going to get out of this one, street fox?" he said as Naruto began smirking at him. "Well, I'm going to get out of this because you forgot a very simple lesson," Naruto said as he began making gagging sounds. "Nair," he said as the gagging sounds got louder. "Tai," he said as the guy could have swore he saw something in the back of his throat. "To CCH a street ox." Naruto gagged/shouted as he spewed slush all over the other kid's face, causing him to drop Naruto. As soon as Naruto touched the ground, he quickly made a snowball and then threw it into the kid's face, adding insult to injury. The kid got up, muttered something about sneaky foxes, and then left the clearing to join the other losers. Naruto smirked as suddenly all the kids jumped out again, all of them armed with individual snowballs. Naruto's sweat dropped, but kept that familiar smirk on his face. They all began throwing their snowballs, one at a time, and Naruto began working that street fox magic of his. Naruto grabbed each snowball as it came to him, and chucked it at a different victim each time. He kept on doing this until all of the kids that were throwing the snowballs were knocked on their backs. Naruto looked on at his moaning victims as they squirmed on the ground. He smiled a large smile as he counted each one until he discovered a small problem. 4 were missing: Neji, Lee, Tenten, and that Hinata girl. This fight was not over yet. He had 4 more victims. Meanwhile, Neji, Tenten, Lee, and Hinata looked on in wonder at Naruto, mystified by his ability. It was more amazing than any rumor they had heard before. Lee just steadied his breath as he picked up a snowball. "Lee, what are you doing?" Tenten said as Lee just looked at her. "If anyone's going to do this, it's going to be me," Lee said as he began running into the clearing, screaming a battle cry. Naruto looked at him with a smirk as he charged at him. "Take this, street fox," Lee shouted as he launched a snowball towards Naruto. Naruto leapt back before the snowball hit him, and then bent down. "Roar, roar, roar," Naruto shouted out as he began hurling multiple snowballs at Lee. Lee got hit with snowball after snowball at Lee, till the shower of snowballs became a hurricane of snowballs. Eventually the hurricane of snowballs died down, and we see Lee covered in snow, with only his 2 large eyebrows sticking out of the snow. Naruto smirked as he picked up another snowball, and started throwing it up and down in the air. 1 down, 3 to go. Naruto breathed out as continued tossing the snowball up and down. Now Tenten, Neji, and Hinata remained, all of them staring at Naruto. Tenten then picked up a large amount of snowballs, and loaded them up into her arms, with the help of Neji, of course. "Alright, I'm going in," Tenten said as Neji nodded as Tenten began heading towards the, what they assumed to be, northern edge of the clearing. As she reached it, she took a deep breath and then ran out into the clearing. "Street fox," Tenten shouted as Naruto looked at her, and then sweat dropped at the large amount of snowballs she had on her. "You're mine!" she shouted as she jumped high into the air, though in reality it would have only been about 10, maybe 15, feet into the air. As she reached the height of her jump, she began throwing all of the snowballs, at a very high rate of fire. They all came towards Naruto, so many of them coming so very fast, and in so many different directions. Naruto at first considered diving back into the snow in front of him, but Tenten had sent a lot of snowballs that way, he wouldn't be able to escape that way. So, if you cannot go forward, fall back. Naruto dropped the snowball he was carrying, and then crossed his arms, and fell back into the snow. As the snowballs hit the street fox-less snow, Tenten came back down to earth, and then created another snowball and ran over to the hole Naruto created, but found he wasn't there. As she landed, she raised an eyebrow. "Wow, he sure can move fast," Tenten said as she heard something behind her. She turned quickly to see Naruto jumping out of the snow. She threw her snowball at him, and he threw his new one at her, but she noticed something. His snowball is a lot bigger than hers. Hers was about the size of a boulder, about 6 inches in diameter. His was about twice as big. As their snowballs collided, his ran hers over, literally, and then rushed into her face, knocking her back on the ground. Tenten laid there for a second before she began giggling. Naruto looked at her weird before she spoke to him. I was just hit by a snowball made by the street fox, she shouted as Naruto's face vaulted into the ground. Yes, I know, Naruto heard from behind him as he saw Lee coming out of the snow that covered him. Who would have thought it, right, Tenten? Lee asked as Tenten nodded and Naruto's sweat dropped. Well, good luck with Niji Street Fox, Lee shouted as he and Tenten rushed towards the loser's part of the clearing. Naruto was truly confused at this point. He hated getting nailed in the head with one of the old man's snowballs. Older kids, strange. Niji sighed as he straightened up and looked at Hinata. Hinata-sama, I want you to stay here, okay? Niji said as Hinata nodded, she herself staring intently at Naruto, awed by his abilities. Niji nodded as well before moving to the, supposedly, southern side of the clearing. He stood there, standing against the tree, keeping Naruto, or Hinata, from seeing him. Niji then flashed through a few seals, ones that he shouldn't know. He then took a deep breath and then opened his eyes, strange veins appearing on the sides of his eyes. Byakugan, he said silently as he began looking around. He saw through the trees and looked at Naruto. He got out the exact distance, angle, and direction Naruto was in. He was facing the opposite direction of him. He was about 10 yards away, and he was about 15 degrees to the right of the tree Niji was behind. He could measure this because of his blind spot. Niji bent down, got his snowball ready, keeping his Byakugan on Naruto, before standing back up. He kept his Byakugan on as he jumped from behind the tree, only deactivating it as he touched the ground. Street Fox, Niji shouted as Naruto turned, only to see a snowball coming right at him. Naruto knew a few things. He couldn't dodge it, it was coming too fast at him. He couldn't block it, he would get knocked out of the game. So there was only one thing to do. Naruto picked a kunai out of his jacket pocket. After all, when you're Street Fox, never leave home without it, and he chucked it into the snowball, cutting it, not clean, in half. Niji's eyes widened as he saw the kunai land in the snow in front of him, and watched as Naruto plucked the two halves of the snowball in the air, and chucked them back at Niji. Niji was not struck by one snowball, but two halves of a snowball. Naruto smirked as he watched Niji fall back into the tree, and just as he was getting the snow off of his face he noticed the tree branch limbs were shaking and then he remembered the snow on the limbs. Niji was buried under at least 2 feet of tree snow, pine cones in it and all. Naruto stared for a moment before Niji's head popped out of the snow, with snow and pine cones in his mouth. Naruto stared for a moment before breaking out laughing, holding his ribs as he stood. Naruto continued laughing, till he saw Niji's eyes widen as he tried to say something, but all that came out was MHMHMHM, which of course caused Naruto to burst laughing again. Finally Niji spat out all of the snow he had in his mouth and looked at Naruto with a surprised look on his face and screamed, "Naruto, look out!" Naruto just got to turning around before getting nailed in the face by a snowball. Everyone, including Niji, gasped when they saw what had just happened. They all looked at the culprit, and it was Hinata. Hinata shrunk under everyone's gaze, and she shrunk even more when Naruto rubbed the snow off of his face and stared at her with narrowed eyes. But as Naruto began laughing out loud, everyone looked at him with an estranged look on their face as he just gave out a deep, belly laugh. Naruto finally stopped laughing and smiled at Hinata with a fox smile. "Wow, you're pretty good. I didn't even notice you while I was laughing. I'd better keep my eye on you if we ever get into another snowball fight," Naruto shouted as he began laughing again as Hinata blushed lightly. Naruto smiled as he looked at all of the others, causing them to smile a bit too. After all, his smiles seemed to be infectious. "Well, come on, isn't there anything else to do in this weather? Come on!" Naruto shouted as the other kids got up and ran over to the clearing and began playing a bunch of other winter games. Winter games like building snow forts, making snow angels, and building snowmen, which Naruto was at first excited about, at first thinking they would be making a man out of snow, only to be disappointed when he was wrong. But eventually, the sun began lowering under the hills. All the kids began going home, and Naruto went back to his hideout. Naruto got into his tent, after rekindling the fire, and taking off a few of the jackets he sat down in the tent. He looked around and saw the snow melting. Before Naruto would have loved the fact the snow was melting, but "Aw man, the snow's melting," Naruto moaned as he laid down. "Oh well, I'll just have to wait for the next one," Naruto shouted as he laughed before going to sleep. "Oh make." As the kids were building their snowman, Tenten reached into her pocket and pulled out an old, rusty ninja headband. "Hey guys, let's put this on him," she shouted as all of the kids agreed. They put Hinata on Niji's shoulders and had her tie it on. And as she finished, the snowman began shaking, his round bottom turned into legs, his coal eyes and mouth turned into regular eyes and mouth, and his button nose turned into a nose. The kids stared at him for a moment, as he blinked before smiling. Happy Burr was all he got out before a loud boom resounded through the area and the snowman's head blew into pieces. The kids jumped back before looking in the direction of a man, holding a long metal object that had a hole in the end that was smoking. He was wearing some ninja clothes, a ninja mask, and an unmarked headband on. The only thing that could identify him was a large, golden on his chest. Good, that copyright infringement is gone, the man with the said as he noticed the kids staring at him. Well, enjoy the rest of the story I wrote out for you kids, the man with the said as he suddenly disappeared. Close to a year later. Konoha streets. It was close to a year after the snowball fight between Naruto and his Street Fox fan club. Many people in Konoha would tell you that during that time, while not only the amount of items being stolen by the Street Fox have increased, but also his rate of escape was reaching new heights. This was for two reasons. First off, he was seemingly getting faster, though not to the point which he could escape the best Chunin, or low-ranked Jonin. There was a second reason, that reason slowly but surely playing out right on the very streets of Konoha. We go down to the local market area, to the butcher shop, a common place for the Street Fox to steal from, and see a little girl, looking to be about 4 years in age, with blonde hair going down to her shoulders, walking into the butcher shop, wearing just rags and a blanket over her shoulder. She was crying, and many of the customers, and even the managers and employees, walked up to her. The manager stepped up to the girl and kneed down to her level. "Now, little girl, why are you crying?" he said as the girl sniffled and looked up to his level, many tears in her eyes. "Am my mommy and daddy left me, hee hee," she said as she began sobbing again, and many of the customers began tearing up. "Thdh, they said that thdh they didn't want me," she cried out as many of the women in the shop began crying openly. Then why don't you go to the orphanage, little girl?" the manager said as he began tearing up. "Thdh, they said that they couldn't take care of me, they said that they couldn't support my any needs. So they left me out in the rain," she shouted, sobbing and sniffing with each word, many of the customers, both male and female, openly crying at this point. The little girl took off the blanket and spread it out. Why would you please give me some food, I'm so hungry," she said with tears as the manager began wiping the tears coming out of his eyes. "I'm sorry, little girl, I can't give out free food," he said as the girl began crying again. Then suddenly one of the customers dropped a piece of meat into the blanket. "Then we'll pay for it," the customer shouted as many agreed with her, tears in all of their eyes. One by one, each customer dropped a piece of meat into the girl's blanket. As each piece of meat entered the blanket, the little girl's eyes began glowing. When it was full, the little girl tied it up and slung it over her shoulder, and gave a soft, tear-filled smile going out to all the people who had given her food, causing their tears to come out some more. Thank you, everyone," she said as she began walking out. Thank you for your kindness," she said as she left the butcher shop and entered an alleyway. As she walked, she kept on smiling that soft smile. "What kind people, what generous people, what nice people," what she said as she looked over her shoulder to see how far back the streets were. When she saw she was far away enough, her smile turned into a familiar foxy grin. "What saps?" she shouted as a cloud of smoke surrounded her. As the smoke cleared, we see a familiar blonde, wily, sneaky ninja in training standing there. His fox grin plastered over his face as he stood there. Naruto's attire had been the same as close to a year ago, however he had grown into it a bit, but it was still baggy on him. His blonde hair was a bit long and untamed, but Naruto thought that just added to his image as Street Fox. And the blanket that had been flung over his shoulder was now a full burlap sack. Naruto snicked as he walked down the alleys. Ever since he had gotten down that transformation jutsu, he had been able to steal more easily than ever. In fact, it all started the day after the snowball fight. Well, he could tell you about it, but let me show you instead. Flashback. Naruto was sitting in his place in class as he did every single day. Today his teachers were a bit late showing up, so he and his classmates just sat there, some of them talking amongst themselves. They all talked, and waited, for several minutes before Irika and Mizuki showed up, smirks plastered on their face. They began taking roll, and when they were finished they looked up at the class. "Good morning, class," they said with the smirks on their faces. "Good morning, Irika-sensei, Mizuki-sensei," the entire class said, albeit in different tones, in unison. "Alright then, class, we want you to get your books out," Irika said as the entire class groaned and got out their books. "And now we want you to throw them into the center of the room," Mizuki said as everyone just stared at him with a surprised look. "Go ahead, do it," he said with excitement as much of the class began throwing their books into the center of the room, some enjoying it more than others. "Now do you all know why we had you do this?" Mizuki asked as the entire class shook their heads no. "Because the reading and writing parts of the class are, mostly, over," Irika said as the entire class looked at him with a shocked look. From now on, most of what we're going to be doing will be practical and hands-on learning. Irika shouted as many of the children jumped up in celebration. Now then, for a couple days we're going to go over your first seal. Irika said, making many of the kids, save for a few of the clan kids, gasp. Now then, let's begin studying the ram seal. Irika said as he began drawing a picture of the ram seal on the board. You see class, the ram seal is the primary seal in many jutsu. You see what it does is activate the chakra that is located in the sea of chakra. Irika said as he say, many kids watching intently. Which if you have indeed been keeping up with your studies you would know that it is located at the stomach, though the Akimichi Sea would probably be an ocean. Irika said as he began chuckling, as did others, but Chuji simply began shaking as he looked up. We're not fat. Chuji shouted as many looked at him with a weirded out look. We're chubby! He shouted as he punched his fist into the air. Are you done, Akimichi-san? Mizuki said as Chuji just sat in his desk and mumbled something about chubby people. Anyway, Irika said as everyone's attention went back to the front. Like I said, the ram seal stimulates the chakra in the sea of chakra, and then allows the user, granted they have enough chakra control, to use it in any part of the body, or in any jutsu. In fact, every jutsu we'll be teaching you over the next few years will involve the ram seal. Irika said as everyone nodded. Now then, we're going to be going over this for a couple days before we actually try the seals, so let's get to work. Irika said as much of the class moaned, should have known that the stupid reading and writing wasn't completely over yet. A couple boring days later. It was 2 days later, and the first thing the kids did after roll was called was go out into the training field of the academy, where trees with targets and rings could be seen around the entire field. Irika and Mizuki stood in front of the group with smirks on their faces. Alright now class, we're going to see if these past 2 days have been fruitful for you all. Irika said as Mizuki nodded. We're going to call you up, one by one, and see if you can get to your chakra. Irika said as Mizuki nodded again. Not only that, but if you can summon up your chakra, I'll be measuring it. Mizuki said as many of the kids were bouncing about with excitement. Alright then Shino Abirame, please step forth. Mizuki said as Shino came up. The rest of the class went in the same direction, the children coming up in alphabetical order. All of the clan kids that went were able to draw out their chakra, taking major ones like the Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga only a few seconds to gather it, while taking Shino Abirame, Shikamaru Nara, and Chuji Akimichi about a half of a minute. It took other clan and house members like Kiba Inuzuka and Sakura Haruno a few minutes to get their chakra out, due to chakra training not exactly being on their clan's to-do list. Ino Yamanaka had not gone, but they expected for her to do very well. But right now it was a certain street fox's turn. Naruto Uzumaki. Irika said dryly as Naruto stepped forward with a nervous look on his face. Please make the ram seal and get your chakra out. Irika said yet again in a dry tone. Naruto nodded as he made the ram seal and began focusing on his stomach. He stood there, in the same position for 10 whole minutes. He could hear many of the kids snickering behind his back, not only that but he could also hear his teachers doing the same right in front of him. After another 5 minutes Irika stepped forward with an amused look on his face. Alright Uzumaki, you can stop now, don't worry about it, Irika said as Mizuki grasped his shoulder. What is it, Mizuki-sensei? Irika asked as Mizuki simply pointed towards the ground Naruto was standing on. Irika looked, and his eyes widened at what he saw. There were small circles of dust going around Naruto's feet, and there were also rocks, jumping around on the ground. Naruto ground his teeth together, and tensed his body up as he began focusing even harder on his stomach, and then it happened. Wisps of blue chakra, larger than all of the other kids, began surrounding and encircling Naruto, causing dust to kick up into some of the others' eyes. Naruto eventually opened his own eyes, and looked on with great excitement at the chakra that was encircling him, while Mizuki and Irika stood off to the side staring at the wisps of chakra. Mizuki, what chakra level is he? Irika asked as Mizuki swallowed a lump in his throat. It's at least mid-chunin, he said as Irika just stared at Naruto. Oh, Irika said as he began feeling like he was going to faint. Flashback end. Since then Naruto's been doing laps at the academy, he's been practicing using his throwing weapons, and he's been learning more about chakra. Now then, one may wonder why doesn't Naruto do this all of the time. While you see, despite the crimes Naruto could get away with using the transformation jutsu, he finds that he still likes the thrill of the chase. So, every now and again, Naruto will not use the transformation jutsu, and just plain old up whenever his would-be catchers like the old days. After all, he needed his exercise. It was the weekend now, Saturday to be precise, and that meant that there was no academy today. However, kids could come to the academy, and use some of the facilities around there for practice. Naruto chose not to, for 2 very obvious reasons. 1, he had better things to do with his time, like get food and water. And 2, they would keep him from getting within 20 feet of it. I guess they're already embarrassed enough by me, they don't need me getting any better. Naruto thought as a boastful smirk came onto his face. Naruto finally arrived at his hideout, which over the years had not changed too much, barely even at all. The only noticeable things were the rotting pile of meat in one corner, which had rats picking at it. Too bad, that pile went bad already, oh well. Naruto said as he walked over to a clean corner and placed the meat there, and also put some mouse traps, stolen from a store, around the meat, which he would let the rats eat as soon as it went bad. I guess I'll eat some beef with chicken and fish. Naruto said as he pointed to each item, the beef in the pile he just got, the chicken that was roasting over the fire, remember Fox in the hen house? And the fish he had yet to clean and gut. Naruto went over to the tent, and off to one side was piles of shuriken, kunai, and nin wire. He picked up a nice sharp kunai and walked over to the fish. You see, ever since Naruto first bought from Tenten, he's been going there ever since. Though the weapons weren't cheap though, to get some of them he would have to give Tenten a tale of one of his most recent robberies, hunts, or chases. Alright, maybe they were cheap, but Naruto wasn't complaining, and whenever Tenten's dad got home it seemed as though he didn't notice, according to Tenten. Also, Tenten says that things in her class are going well too, saying that everyone loves the stories he gives her, and that everyone can't wait for snow to come so they can have another whack at him. Naruto chuckled whenever Tenten told him that, saying that if he ever got hit by a snowball again, hell would freeze over, he'd make sure of that. But anyway, that's not what was currently running through Naruto's head. What was running through his head was yesterday at the academy. It was one of the worst days Naruto's had in well a few days. First off, he was late, damn him and his appetite, then there was taijutsu practice. Now the reason why this would be bad for Naruto was because he had no formal taijutsu training. So basically whoever he fought would basically kick his ass if only he were allowed to use kunai. But anyways, that's besides the point. Today, his partner was Sasuke Uchiha, and once again no matter how hard Naruto tried to punch him, he would just use something he called his clan taijutsu and whoop his ass, and of course Naruto gets laughed at for being beaten, so yeah, he was pretty pissed off today. But Naruto was not one to just sit still. Oh no, he was gonna do something about this, he was gonna kick his ass next time. But then again, why wait? Naruto looked up at the sky. It was getting late, and Sasuke would be heading back to his clan's place soon. Naruto smirked as he got up and began running through the alleys leading to the Uchiha district. By the time Naruto navigated his way around the clan district, it was really late. It had been a long while since Naruto went down that path with that Itachi guy, so the details of how to get around were sketchy, and he got lost a few times. Naruto began walking, and was not 3 steps into the clan district when he smelt something that by now was so familiar to him that he could pick it out of anything, something that he himself was saturated with because of beating upon beating. Blood, and lots of it. Naruto glanced around the area before picking a kunai out of one of his pockets. He ran against a wall and began sneaking around the area, something that became instinct to him whenever he could just feel something was wrong. Naruto kept on sneaking till he saw a figure, running a bit wearily from a house. Naruto got away from the wall and quickly began following that figure. He followed it for about 5 blocks, trying his best not to be noticed by it, when the figure ran into an alley. Naruto followed the figure into the alley, and was surprised to see it slumped up against the wall taking deep breaths. Damn it takes so much chakra to use it, I would have never believed it unless I tried it for myself, the figure said as Naruto began approaching. But what Naruto didn't notice was the ken he was about to step on. Crunch. The crushkin sounded as the figure instantly turned to face Naruto, and the face of the figure was one that Naruto was not quite expecting to see. It was Itachi Uchiha, the guy who caught him a year ago, and he was covered in blood. You, he said under his deep breaths as his eyes narrowed. Naruto glared at him as he got a second kunai out. What the hell are you doing? Naruto asked as Itachi let out a slightly amused chuckle. I could very well ask you the same thing, raising a weapon to me, he said as Naruto snarled at him. But to answer your question, just look around you, all this was my doing. Itachi murmured, Naruto's eyes flashing wide as he looked around at the immediate area, seeing all the corpses, sliced open, bleeding profusely all around him. What? Are you crazy or something? Naruto shouted as Itachi looked at him, with Sharingan eyes that appeared to be fading fast. I was simply testing myself. I wanted to see what I could really do, Itachi said as he looked at Naruto with a calm look, a look that was betrayed by his eyes which showed only pure insanity. I wonder though, given what you are, if you could provide me with a better test? Itachi said as he put his sword back into its sheath. Naruto looked at Itachi with a fine look of courage, but on the inside he was beginning to panic. But he wouldn't let this crazy prick know it. Heh, what makes you think you can do too much better against me than last time, boxer boy? Naruto said, his voice only quivering slightly. Itachi sent Naruto a grimace, not wishing to recall that memory. But the grimace went away as he replaced it with his normal calm look. Last time I was on orders, Itachi said as he pulled out a small pill out of his pouch. This time, it doesn't matter, Itachi said as he popped the pill into his mouth and chewed it up, and swallowed it. Then suddenly Itachi's body just seemed to expand a bit, and the fading Sharingan was brought to full force in his eyes. Itachi closed his eyes as he smirked. Now get ready, Street Fox, be ready for the power of the Itachi said as his eyes snapped open, revealing a shuriken-like spiral in his eyes. Mangekyo Sharingan, Tsukuyami! Itachi shouted as suddenly Naruto felt like he was leaving his body. Tsukuyami. In one instant Naruto was still at the clan district, but in the next he was strapped to a cross in some sort of red place, with red everywhere. Then all of a sudden Itachi appeared in front of him, his sword drawn and ready to strike. For the next 72 hours, I will be stabbing you in liver, I hope you're ready for this, Street Fox. Itachi said. Naruto closed his eyes, too afraid to see what was going to happen. But when the pain never came, he saw that Itachi was just standing there, fear in his eyes as he looked at something behind Naruto. Though Naruto didn't know it, so he just figured he was afraid of him. Oh, look at this, are you afraid of me? Well, you should be, I mop the floor with you if I wasn't strapped to this freaking cross thing. Naruto kept on talking, though Itachi wasn't paying attention. What Itachi was paying attention to was the chakra that was leaking into the dimension. It was an orangish red, in fact it was its color that kept him from noticing it sooner. Eventually the chakra began taking shape, and it shaped itself till it was in the shape of a giant gate. Then the chakra began solidifying, turning into the giant gate it was shaped after. The gate had 8 bars, and in the middle of all of the bars was a piece of paper with the kanji 4 seal on it. But that isn't what is currently causing Itachi so much distress. What was causing him distress was the giant pair of red eyes that were staring at him, and a giant, toothy smile that was being licked by a tongue. Suddenly a rope of the chakra shot out of the cage, and grasped onto Itachi's leg, pulling him onto the ground and then pulling him past the cross that Naruto was stuck to, much to Naruto's chagrin. Oh, come on! You dragged me here and now you're just going to run away. You're a wuss! Naruto shouted as Itachi tried to dig his hands into something, and when he couldn't he was dragged all the way into the cage and was let go. Itachi, though, didn't take a moment to think about this, and made a mad dash for the gates, opening only to be stomped on by a giant hand-like claw. Itachi screamed as he felt most of the bones in his body be crushed, and then screamed as he felt himself being picked up by said claw. He was lifted all the way till he was face to snout with the Kyuubi. You Uchiha truly are an impudent lot. Did you, a sprite in comparison, truly think you could wander into this plane of existence, drag my feeble host's mind here and then proceed to destroy it? The Kyuubi said, the nine-tailed fox darkly chuckling as he did. Hate to inform you, but if anyone is destroying this brat's mind, it's me, the fox said in truly venomous tone before licking its chops. Though I must say 6 years without a single interaction with another thing, it's made me hungry for more than just company, the fox said as Itachi's eyes greatly widened with a great fear, already the Uchiha bringing his hands together, trying to refocus his chakra despite the pain. And now be honored as you will serve as my first meal in years. The great demon fox said as its jaws flew open, the demon fox merely tossing Itachi's body towards his gullet. Dispel! Itachi shouted all the way into the Kyuubi's jaws, that in the next moment clamped shut. Real world. Naruto and Itachi snapped back into the real world in the